Have you ever looked at someone you love and felt an invisible thread connecting you across time and space? A bond so deep it seems to have been woven long before you ever met. Have you felt a sense of homecoming in another's presence? An ease so natural, it feels like remembering a song your soul has always known. Or have you ever been caught in a connection that felt more like a storm than a shelter? A relationship of intense, magnetic highs and painful, bewildering lows. Have you felt bound to someone, unable to stay, but terrified to leave? And in the quiet moments, have you asked yourself, why does this feel so difficult, so inescapable? Where does this profound connection, and sometimes this profound suffering, come from in the quiet of our modern lives? So many of us carry a silent weight in our hearts. It is the weight of unspoken obligations. We might feel an immense debt to a parent for their sacrifice, a debt to a friend for their past kindness, or a deep, unsettling sense of duty to a romantic partner. This feeling of indebtedness can become a prison. We do things not from a place of joy, but from a place of guilt. We stay when we know we should go. We give when we have nothing left to offer. Love, which should be a source of freedom, starts to feel like a burden. Connection, which should be our greatest solace, becomes a source of our deepest anxiety. We find ourselves trapped in a silent, internal negotiation, constantly weighing a ledger of who did what for whom. And we ask the painful question, do I owe them my happiness? Is this love? Or is it a debt I can never truly repay? What if the answers to these questions are not found in that ledger? What if freedom from this emotional weight cannot be achieved by analyzing who is right and who is wrong? What if the path to clarity lies not in looking more closely at the other person, but in turning the gaze of our awareness gently inward? What if there is an ancient wisdom, a timeless map of the human heart that has guided souls through these very same storms for thousands of years? This is an invitation to embark on such a journey into the heart of karma and love, a path illuminated by the profound insights of Buddhist wisdom, not as a rigid doctrine or a set of rules, but as a gentle guide, a compassionate friend, to help us understand ourselves, our intricate connections, and the very nature of peace. It is a path that promises that no matter how tangled the threads may seem, freedom is always possible. We begin our journey by approaching a word that is often spoken, but rarely understood, a concept veiled in mystery and misconception. That word is karma. For many, the word conjures images of a cosmic judge, a celestial accountant keeping a tally of our rights and wrongs, preparing to deliver a reward or a punishment. We imagine fate as an unchangeable sentence, handed down from an unknown court. But this is not the heart of karma. The ancient wisdom of the East offers a vision that is far more intimate, more empowering, and infinitely more profound. To understand karma, you must first let go of the idea of an external force acting upon you. Instead, imagine a river. This river is your life, your consciousness, your journey. It has currents, eddies, and a powerful flow. Karma is not an angry god throwing rocks into this river to block your path. Karma is the river itself. It is the flow of energy, the seamless unfolding of cause and effect, a natural law, as fundamental and as impersonal as gravity. Gravity does not punish you for stepping off a cliff. It simply responds to the action. In the same way, karma does not punish. It simply responds. It is the universe reflecting your own energy back to you, a mirror showing the nature of your own actions. The word karma, in Sanskrit, simply means action or deed. It is not a destiny you must passively accept, but a creative process you are actively participating in. Moment by moment, you are not a prisoner of fate. You are the artist of your own existence. And your thoughts, your words, and your actions are the brushstrokes that create the masterpiece of your life. This understanding shifts everything because it returns the power to you. Karma is not something that happens to you. It is something you do. It is the law of action and result. Think of a master potter sitting at their wheel. The clay on the wheel is the substance of life, the raw material of reality. The potter's hands, shaping, guiding, and molding the clay, are your choices, your intentions. A life lived in anger, resentment, and greed will shape the clay into a vessel that is brittle, misshapen, and unable to hold anything of value. A life lived with kindness, patience, and generosity will shape the clay into a vessel that is strong, beautiful, and capable of holding the waters of peace and joy. The potter cannot blame the clay if the final pot is flawed. The responsibility lies entirely in the hands that shaped it. In the same way, we are the potters of our own experience. The life you are living now, the circumstances you find yourself in, the people you meet, the feelings that arise in your heart, are all, in some way, the result of the clay you have shaped in the past. This is not a reason for guilt, but a cause for awakening. It is the realization that if you were the architect of your past, you hold the blueprints for your future. This brings us to the seeds of the past. In Buddhist psychology, the mind is often compared to a deep, fertile field, or a vast storehouse, the alaya vijnana. Every action we perform, every word we speak, every thought we think, if it is fueled by intention, plants a seed, abiza o chungtu. In this storehouse of our consciousness, these are not physical seeds, but latent energetic potentials, imprints left on the flow of our mind stream, actions born of love, compassion, and wisdom plant wholesome seeds, seeds that will, when the conditions are right, ripen into experiences of happiness, peace, and connection. Actions born of greed, hatred, and ignorance plant unwholesome seeds, which will eventually ripen into experiences of suffering, conflict, and isolation. Some of these seeds were planted yesterday, others were planted years ago, and according to this ancient teaching, many were planted in lifetimes long before this one, by a version of you that you no longer consciously remember. This is why our lives can sometimes feel so perplexing. A sudden, unexplainable sadness may be the sprouting of a seed of grief planted long ago. A chance encounter that blossoms into a beautiful friendship may be the ripening of a seed of kindness from a distant past. Your mind is a garden, and in it are flowers and weeds whose origins you may not recall. You are not responsible for having the garden you inherited, but you are fully responsible for how you tend to it now. There is a simple story of a farmer that illustrates this perfectly. The farmer stands at the edge of his field, at the beginning of a new season. He looks out and sees a patchwork of results from his previous work. In one corner, he sees tough, persistent weeds growing, a clear result of his neglect and use of poor seeds in a past season. This is his negative karma ripening. In another part of the field, he sees a few hardy stalks of grain that managed to survive the winter, the fruit of a small, wise effort he made last year. This is his positive karma bearing fruit. The farmer could spend his entire day in regret. He could curse the weeds, lamenting his past laziness. He could bemoan the fact that there are not more stalks of grain, lost in frustration over his past shortcomings. But the farmer is wise. He knows that staring at the weeds will not make them disappear. He knows that wishing for more grain will not make it magically appear. He understands that the harvest of the past is already determined. His power does not lie in the past. His power is here, now, under the morning sun. And so, he takes a deep breath, and he gets to work. He patiently begins to pull the weeds, one by one. This is the practice of purification, of skillfully addressing the results of past negative actions. He tills the soil, aerating it, preparing it for a new crop. This is the practice of cultivating a receptive and ready mind. And then, most importantly, he reaches into his bag and takes out the seeds he has carefully chosen for this season. Seeds of the highest quality grain. Consciously, deliberately, he plants these new seeds in the prepared soil. The farmer knows he cannot change last year's harvest, but he has absolute power over the potential of next year's harvest. He is not a prisoner of his past results. He is the creator of his future possibilities. This story is our story. You are that farmer. Your mind is that field. This very moment, right now, is your new season. To be caught in regret over past mistakes, to be tangled in resentment over hurts you have suffered, is to waste your precious energy staring at the weeds. To be truly alive is to recognize the power of this present moment. It is the only place where you can plant new seeds. This understanding is the ultimate liberation. You are not defined by your past. You are not chained to the person you were yesterday. Every conscious breath is an opportunity to begin anew. Every choice, no matter how small, is a seed. When someone speaks to you with anger, you have a choice. Do you plant a seed of retaliation by responding with more anger? Or do you plant a seed of peace by responding with patience and a desire to understand when you wake up in the morning? Do you plant a seed of anxiety by immediately reaching for your phone and scrolling through a feed of comparison and conflict? Or do you plant a seed of clarity by taking 5 minutes to simply sit with your breath? These are the real, tangible moments where karma is created. It is not an abstract theory. It is the most practical reality of our lives. The future is not a distant land we arrive at. The future is built right here, in the quality of this present moment. But there is one final, crucial element we must understand, for it is the key that unlocks the entire mechanism of karma. That element is intention. In the West, we often judge an action by its result, but in the wisdom of the Buddha, an action is judged primarily by the intention, the cetana, that motivated it. Intention is the energy that gives life to the seed. Imagine a wealthy CEO who donates $1 million to a children's hospital. The media praises him. His company's image is boosted, and the hospital benefits. Now imagine a poor woman who has only one small piece of bread, and she sees someone who is hungrier than she is. With a heart full of genuine compassion, she gives away her only food. In the eyes of the world, The CEO's action is far greater, but in the eyes of karma, the woman's action, born of pure, selfless intention, may create a far more powerful and beautiful result in her stream of consciousness. The amount of the gift is external, but the quality of the giving is internal. It is the inner state, the motivation behind the deed, that truly matters. A surgeon and a murderer may both cut a person with a knife. The external action, cutting, is the same, but the surgeon acts with the intention to heal, creating positive karma. The murderer acts with the intention to harm, creating deeply negative karma. The action itself is neutral. It is the will, the volition, the conscious intent that gives the action its moral and karmic weight. This is why mindfulness is so essential. By becoming aware of our thoughts and motivations, we can begin to purify our intentions before they even become actions, ensuring that the seeds we plant are the ones we truly wish to see grow. Karma, then, is this beautifully intricate and intimate dance of action and result, a process governed entirely by our own choices and intentions. It is not a rigid, unchangeable destiny, but a flowing, dynamic river of our own making. Now that we understand karma as a neutral, intimate law of cause and effect, a flow of energy that we ourselves direct, how does this universal principle shape the most profound, the most beautiful, and often the most challenging aspect of our lives, our relationships with others? The universal law of karma, the river of cause and effect we have just explored, flows through every aspect of our existence, but its currents are felt most powerfully in the heart of our relationships. It is in our connections with others, in the love we share, the conflicts we endure, and the bonds we form, that the seeds of our past actions come to fruition in the most vivid and transformative ways. To navigate this complex, beautiful, and sometimes treacherous terrain, the wisdom tradition of Vietnam offers a unique and profound map, articulated through two simple words that carry immense weight: Du Yen and Ne. These are the two invisible threads that weave the intricate tapestry of human connection. On the surface, they might translate to predestined affinity and karmic debt, but their true meaning goes far deeper, offering a lens through which we can understand why some people enter our lives with the gentleness of a spring breeze, while others arrive with the force of a storm. Let us first explore the thread of Du Yen. In popular culture, Du Yen is often romanticized, seen as a kind of fated, serendipitous encounter between soulmates. But this is only a sliver of its true meaning. Du Yen is the Vietnamese expression of a core Buddhist doctrine known as Pratityasamutpada, or dependent origination. This principle is elegantly simple and mind-bendingly profound. This is, because that is. This is not, because that is not. This arises, because that arises. Nothing exists independently. Everything is interconnected, a web of infinite causes and conditions. The meeting of two people, therefore, is never an accident. It is the culmination of a near infinite number of converging streams of cause and effect. Imagine two single raindrops falling on a vast mountain range. One lands on the western slope, the other on the eastern. They travel through different soils, join different streams, flow into different rivers, journey through vast plains and dark valleys, and yet, one day, in the boundless expanse of the great ocean, those two drops of water merge, Their meeting was not a random event, but an inevitability shaped by the entire geography of the mountain, the pull of gravity, and the flow of every current along the way. Your meeting with another person is just like this. It is the result of countless actions, thoughts, and choices made by both of you, stretching back through this life, and it is taught through many others. This duyen, this conditioned meeting, is not inherently good or bad. It is simply the intersection of paths. The nature of the intersection is determined by the seeds you have both sown. This gives rise to two kinds of duyen wholesome affinity, thiet zuyen, and unwholesome affinity. Ak zuyen, a wholesome affinity. A thiet zuyen, it feels like coming home. It is a connection that brings a sense of ease, support, and mutual flourishing. When you are with this person, you feel seen, understood, and encouraged to be your best self. It is a bond that nurtures peace, an unwholesome affinity. An ak zuyen feels like a battle. It is a connection fraught with conflict, misunderstanding, and pain. This person seems to push all your buttons, to draw out your most reactive, fearful, and angry self. It is a bond that creates turmoil. But here is the crucial insight: both are forms of duyen. Both are opportunities. The thian duyen is an opportunity to practice gratitude and share joy. The ak duyen is an opportunity to practice patience, cultivate understanding, and see clearly the parts of yourself that are in need of healing. Now, let us turn to the other thread, the darker, thicker, more tangled thread of nur. The word is often translated as debt, but this can be misleading. It is not a financial transaction. It is not a simple IOU. A better word might be bond, entanglement, or unfinished business. If duyen is the meeting of two paths, nur is the karmic knot that binds them together, often against their will. It is a profound, unresolved entanglement from the past that demands to be addressed. There is a classic Buddhist parable that beautifully illustrates the difference. A beautiful woman dies unexpectedly by the side of a road. A man happens to pass by, feeling a moment of pity. He takes off his expensive outer coat, covers her body to give her some dignity, and continues on his way. A little while later, a second man passes by. He is moved by a deeper sense of compassion. He cannot bear to leave her there. He spends hours digging a proper grave and buries her respectfully. Many years later, in a future life, the woman is reborn as a princess. Through a series of events, she marries the man who had buried her. Their bond is deep, intense, and inescapable. This is the nur. He performed a significant act of kindness, creating a profound karmic connection that had to be repaid with a lifetime of intimacy and care. Their marriage is the playing out of this deep bond. However, during her marriage, the princess meets another man and has a brief, passionate, and ultimately fleeting affair. That man was the one who, in his past life, had simply covered her with his coat. That was the duyen. The connection was real, but lighter, a karmic ripple from a smaller act, playing itself out as a temporary but intense attraction. This story reveals the nature of a relationship based on nur. It is a connection that feels inescapable. There is often a powerful, magnetic pull at the beginning, a sense of having known this person forever. But this intensity soon gives way to a repeating cycle of conflict and drama. It is the classic "I can't live with you, I can't live without you" dynamic. These relationships are often characterized by a feeling of being stuck, of playing out the same script over and over again. There's a sense that there is an old score to settle, an emotional debt that hangs in the air, even if neither person can articulate what it is. This, from a karmic perspective, is the ripening of heavy, unresolved actions from the past. Perhaps one person deeply harmed the other. Perhaps they made intense vows of love or revenge to each other. This unfinished energetic business creates a powerful bond that pulls them together in a subsequent life, forcing them to face the dynamic until the lesson is learned and the energy is finally neutralized and released. So, how can we recognize these threads in our own lives? It requires honest self-reflection. A relationship based primarily on wholesome affinity, or tianzun, has certain recognizable signs. There is a fundamental feeling of peace and safety in the other person's presence. You feel you can be your authentic self without fear of judgment. You inspire each other to grow, and you celebrate each other's successes. When disagreements arise, as they always do, you are able to work through them constructively, leading to a deeper level of intimacy and understanding. It feels like a true partnership, a safe harbor in the storms of life, a relationship bound by the knot of nur. On the other hand, also has its telltale signs. It is a roller coaster of extreme highs and devastating lows. The passion can be intoxicating, but the pain can be unbearable. You often feel a heavy sense of obligation, guilt, or the feeling of being trapped. You replay the same arguments like a broken record, with no resolution in sight. The relationship feels exhausting, emotionally draining, and it depletes your life force. There is an unspoken ledger of hurts and sacrifices, a constant, low-grade feeling that you owe them something, or that they owe you. It is vital to remember that most relationships are not purely one or the other. They are a complex weaving of both threads. There can be deep, wholesome affinity mixed with painful karmic knots. The purpose of this understanding is not to label our relationships as good or bad and then discard the difficult ones. The purpose is to bring awareness to the dynamic. When you recognize the feeling of being trapped in a karmic knot, you can stop blaming the other person. You can stop asking, "Why are you doing this to me?" and start asking a more powerful, more healing question. What is this pattern? What is this dynamic trying to teach me about myself? What unresolved energy within me is being mirrored in this conflict? By shifting the focus from blame to self-inquiry, you begin to untie the knot from the inside. You start to address the debt, not by paying it back through suffering, but by dissolving it with the light of understanding. This feeling of indebtedness, this sense of an emotional ledger at the heart of a nur relationship, is a powerful, often painful emotion. While the ancient wisdom of duyen and nur gives us a spiritual framework, modern psychology also offers a sharp, illuminating lens to understand this very human feeling. What happens when love, which should be a gift, begins to feel like a transaction? The ancient view of our connections, woven from the threads of duyen and nur, gives us a profound spiritual map. It shows us that the feeling of being emotionally indebted to another, of being caught in a painful, inescapable knot, is not just a passing mood, but maybe a karmic echo from a distant past. Yet, We do not need to look to past lives to understand the mechanics of this feeling. Modern psychology provides us with a remarkably sharp and practical lens to see how this dynamic of debt and obligation plays out right here, right now, within the landscape of our own minds. It reveals that many of us, without realizing it, carry an invisible psychological ledger in our relationships. On this ledger, we meticulously, if unconsciously, record every kindness given, every sacrifice made, and every hurt received. This inner accounting turns love into a form of commerce and transforms the sanctuary of a relationship into a marketplace of expectation. This is the realm of transactional love, a way of relating that stands in stark contrast to a much deeper, more liberating form of connection, covenantal love. Let us first examine the transactional mindset, for it is the default operating system for many modern relationships. It is built upon a seemingly fair and logical foundation, an economy of exchange. The unspoken contract reads, "I will meet your needs. If you meet mine, I will provide support, affection, and effort, and I expect a relatively equal return on my investment." The language of this model is filled with words like fairness, equality, and the classic 50-50 split. We hear it in arguments that begin with, "But I did this for you, so why won't you do that for me?" Or, "It's your turn to make the sacrifice. I did it last time." On the surface, this pursuit of balance seems reasonable, but when applied to the delicate ecosystem of love, it becomes a subtle poison. It creates a ledger where love is not a gift, but a commodity to be measured, weighed, and traded. In this model, every interaction is an entry in the books. A thoughtful gesture is a credit. A forgotten anniversary is a significant debit. The relationship is only felt to be working when the accounts are more or less balanced. This creates a constant, low-level anxiety. We are always monitoring, always calculating, consciously or not. Did they appreciate my effort enough? Am I giving more than I'm getting? An act of kindness is not given freely, but offered with a small, invisible price tag, an expectation of future payment. And when that payment doesn't arrive in the form we expect, resentment begins to fester. Resentment is the emotional penalty for an unpaid debt on the psychological ledger. Over time, this transforms the relationship from a safe harbor into a place of tension and insecurity. Love becomes conditional. It is something to be earned, to be deserved, to be proven day after day. It is no longer a space of effortless being, but one of endless doing. And the fear of the final accounting haunts every interaction. Imagine a couple living deep within this transactional world. Their life together is a constant negotiation. An argument over who takes out the garbage is never just about the garbage. It is about fairness, about the ledger. Her unspoken thought might be, "I cooked the meal, I cleaned the kitchen, so the ledger demands that you handle the trash. Your failure to do so is a failure to repay your debt." His unspoken thought might be, "But I worked late all week and brought in the money that paid for the food you cooked, so my account should be in credit. Why are you demanding more?" They are not a team solving a mutual problem. They are two opposing business partners, each auditing the other's performance, each feeling that they are the more diligent and unappreciated party. Every conversation is shadowed by the ghosts of past debts. "Remember when I supported you through that difficult time with your family?" becomes a chit to be cashed in. I gave up a career opportunity for us becomes a loan that demands perpetual interest payments in the form of guilt and obligation. The air in their home is thick with the weight of this invisible ledger, and the spontaneity of genuine affection is crushed under the burden of expectation. Now, let us imagine a different way. This is the way of the covenant. If a transaction is a contract, a covenant is a promise. A contract is based on mutual distrust. It says, "I will do my part only if you do yours, and this document protects me if you fail." A covenant is based on mutual commitment. It says, "I am with you. My commitment is to you and to our shared well-being, regardless of circumstance." The transactional mindset asks, "Am I getting a good deal?" The covenantal mindset asks, "How can I contribute to our well-being?" The fundamental object of the commitment changes. In the transactional model, you are committed to the deal, to the equitable exchange. If the deal goes sour, you have the right to pull out. In the covenantal model, you are committed to the person. The security in the relationship doesn't come from your partner's flawless performance, but from the strength of your shared promise. This is not a call to be a doormat or to endure abuse. A true covenant is a promise between two people to protect and nurture the sacred space between them. It is a commitment to being a team. Let's revisit our couple. But this time, they operate from a covenantal promise. A major financial crisis strikes. One of them unexpectedly loses their job. In the transactional model, this would be a catastrophic imbalance in the ledger. The partner who is still employed would feel the crushing weight of carrying the entire financial burden, and resentment would quickly build. "This isn't fair, I'm doing everything now." But in the covenantal space, the immediate, instinctive response is different. The first words spoken are not, "What will you do?" but "What will we do? How are we going to get through this? I am here with you." The problem is not seen as one person's failure, but as the team's shared challenge. The focus immediately shifts from individual accounting to mutual support. The crisis, instead of breaking them apart, becomes a force that strengthens their bond, weaving their lives more tightly together. They are not two individuals trying to protect their own assets. They are one team, in one boat, navigating one storm, together. So how do we move from the cramped marketplace of transaction to the open field of covenant? It is a practice, a conscious and repeated choice to change our inner orientation. The first step, as always, is awareness. Simply begin to notice the transactional thoughts as they arise in your mind. When you do something kind for your partner, watch for the subtle expectation of return that follows. When you feel a flash of resentment, ask yourself, what unspoken debt do I feel has gone unpaid? Do not judge these thoughts. Just observe them. This is mindfulness applied directly to the heart of your relationship. The second step is a conscious decision to burn the ledger. When you choose to give freely. Make your act of service a complete gift, with no strings attached. Release it into the relationship and let it go. This will feel vulnerable at first, as if you are giving up your leverage, but what you are actually giving up is the burden of being an accountant. You are stepping out of the role of creditor and debtor and into the role of a giver. The third step is to consciously shift your language. Notice how often you use the words you and me, especially in conflict. Practice transforming them into we and us. You always leave your clothes on the floor becomes How can we find a way to keep our room feeling peaceful? You hurt my feelings can become, I feel hurt when this happens. And our connection is so important to me that I want to understand it with you. This is not just a semantic trick. It reframes the entire dynamic from an adversarial one to a collaborative one. Finally, consciously shift your focus from what you are getting to what you can contribute. Instead of waking up and wondering if your partner will meet your needs today, ask yourself, what can I offer to this relationship today? How can I be a source of peace or joy for this person I have committed to? This simple, radical shift in focus can begin to dissolve the transactional mindset from the inside out, replacing the cold calculus of debt with the warm, radiant energy of the gift. The transactional ledger is the psychological engine that powers the painful feeling of nur. It keeps us trapped. The journey towards a covenantal promise is the journey to freedom, where love is no longer a deal to be struck, but a home to be built. Together, this feeling of owing someone, of being trapped in a cycle of expectation and guilt, has a specific name in psychology when it becomes a core part of one's identity and dictates the pattern of a relationship. It's a dynamic that closely mirrors the Buddhist concept of a karmic debt relationship, a painful knot of nur. This is the world of codependency. As we trace the invisible threads of our connections, we see how the spiritual concept of a karmic knot, nur, manifests in our hearts as a felt sense of obligation. We see how it plays out psychologically in our relationships through a transactional ledger of debts and credits. Now, we arrive at the point where this pattern becomes so deeply ingrained that it defines the very structure of a relationship and the identity of the people within it. We enter the world of codependency. This clinical-sounding term is perhaps the most accurate modern name we have for the experience of a karmic debt relationship in its most painful form. It is a dynamic where the boundaries of the self dissolve, and love is distorted into a tangled web of need, rescue, and control. It is not a character flaw or a sign of weakness, but a learned pattern of survival, a deeply human and deeply painful state of being. To understand codependency, we must first understand what it is not. It is not kindness. It is not compassion. It is not generosity. A kind person gives from a place of fullness, as a free choice. A codependent person gives from a place of emptiness, driven by a compulsion. Their giving is not a gift, but a strategy for survival. At its core, codependency is a state of lost selfhood. Imagine a planet that has lost its own axis, its own internal gravity. It stops spinning on its own and is pulled into the chaotic orbit of a volatile star. Its entire climate, its light and its darkness, its seasons of peace and its seasons of storm are now dictated entirely by the behavior of that star. This is the inner experience of the codependent person, their emotional well-being, their sense of peace, and their very identity become completely dependent on the moods, choices, health, and approval of another. Their focus is eternally outward, scanning the other person, trying to manage their feelings, anticipate their needs, and prevent their disapproval. This pattern is often learned in childhood. A child who grew up in a home with an alcoholic, depressed, or narcissistic parent may have learned very early that their safety and survival depended on being a perfect, quiet, and helpful caretaker. They learned that their own needs were secondary. or even a dangerous inconvenience. They learned that love meant sacrificing themselves to stabilize a chaotic environment. As adults, they unconsciously recreate this dynamic, drawn to partners who need saving or fixing, because the role of the rescuer is the only one where they feel they have value. They confuse the intensity of being needed with the intimacy of being loved. They give and give and give, not from a place of genuine, unconditional love, but from a desperate, subconscious need to control their environment and finally earn the safety and validation they never received as a child. This creates a painful, symbiotic dance between two roles, the enabler and the dependent. These are not two different kinds of people, but two sides of the same codependent coin. Two dancers locked in a tragic waltz. The enabler, often also called the caretaker or the rescuer, appears on the surface to be the strong one. They are the ones who hold everything together, who make the excuses, who pay the bills, who clean up the messes. Their identity and self-worth are entirely wrapped up in being needed. They are the long-suffering wife, the ever-patient husband, the parent who refuses to let their adult child face the consequences of their actions. Beneath their outward display of strength, however, lies a profound fear. They are terrified that if they stop helping, if they stop controlling and managing, they will have no purpose. They fear that the other person will leave them, or that their entire world will fall apart. Their help, therefore, is not true help. It is a means of control, a way to keep the other person dependent on them, thus ensuring their own role and sense of worth are secure. The other role is that of the dependent. This person appears to be the problematic one. They may struggle with an addiction, chronic irresponsibility, mental health issues, or an inability to function as an adult. They rely on the enabler to shield them from the natural consequences of their behavior. The dependent learns that no matter what they do, the enabler will be there to rescue them. This creates a prison of its own, for it strips them of the opportunity to learn, to grow, and to develop their own strength and resilience. Why should they change? When the system is set up to support their dysfunction, both partners are profoundly trapped. The enabler is trapped by their need to rescue, and the dependent is trapped by their need to be rescued. It is a closed loop, a feedback cycle of pain that prevents true healing or growth for either person. It is the perfect modern illustration of an unresolved karmic knot, an akzuen, where two souls are bound together not by love, but by their shared wounds. Let us imagine this dynamic in the life of a woman named Lan. Her husband is addicted to gambling. Lan is a classic enabler. She sees her husband not just as a man with a problem, but as her personal mission. She truly believes that her love, if it is powerful enough, patient enough, and sacrificial enough, will be the magic key that cures him. The cycle is heartbreakingly predictable. He will gamble away their savings, their rent money. He will come to her shattered, full of tears, shame, and beautiful promises that this was the last time. In that moment, Lan feels a painful surge of purpose. She is the rescuer, the strong one. She gets a second job, borrows money from her disapproving family, and confronts the angry landlords. She manages the crisis for a few weeks, or maybe even a few months. There is peace, but because her husband has been shielded from the raw, terrifying consequences of his actions, The underlying addiction has not been touched. The urge inevitably returns, and the cycle begins again. Lan's entire life, her every thought and action, orbits around her husband's addiction. Her friends have drifted away, tired of hearing the same story. Her own dreams and hobbies have long since withered from neglect. She is financially and emotionally bankrupt, living on a razor's edge of anxiety. This is not a partnership. This is a prison built for two. This is not in a past life, but here and now, in the form of a relationship that consumes the very soul. Breaking free from such a powerful dynamic is not easy. It begins with the first, terrifying, and courageous step of radical honesty. It is the moment when the enabler stops and admits, "My helping is not helping. My love is not fixing him. My sacrifice is not saving us. It is feeding the disease." This admission is the first crack of light in the prison wall. From there, the journey moves towards the practice of detachment with love. This does not mean becoming cold, cruel, or abandoning the person. It means loving them enough to let go of the illusion that you can control their path. It is the profound realization, I cannot walk your path for you. I cannot feel your feelings for you. I cannot save you from yourself. I can only be responsible for my own life, my own choices, and my own peace. This naturally leads to the vital work of rediscovering oneself. The codependent has spent so long looking outward that they have forgotten how to look inward. The journey back begins with the simplest questions: what do I like? What do I need? What makes me feel alive? It's about turning that powerful beam of attention, which was once used to scan the other person, back onto oneself. And finally, it involves the essential skill of setting boundaries. A boundary is not a wall you build to punish someone. It is a fence you build to protect the garden of your own well-being. It is the calm, clear, and firm statement, I love you, and because I do, I will no longer participate in this pattern that is destroying us both. I will not pay your debts. I will not lie to your boss for you. I will not allow shouting in this house. For the codependent, setting a boundary can feel like an act of profound cruelty, but it is, in fact, the most compassionate action possible. It is the act that finally creates the possibility for genuine change. For both people, the painful orbit of codependency, the transactional ledgers, the feeling of being karmically indebted, these are all symptoms. They are the smoke, not the fire. Both the ancient wisdom of karma and the modern understanding of psychology point to a common source for this intense suffering, this desperate need to control or be rescued. The source is not love. It is the clinging, grasping, fearful energy of attachment. So what is this force that can look so much like love, yet causes so much pain? We have journeyed from the spiritual landscape of karma to the psychological terrain of codependency, and at every turn, we find ourselves confronting the same fundamental question: what is the source of this suffering in our relationships? What is the force that takes something as beautiful as love and twists it into a painful knot of obligation? Guilt and fear, the answer offered by the world's great wisdom traditions, and articulated with pristine clarity by the Buddha, is both simple and radical. The source of our suffering is not love itself. It is not the other person. It is not the external circumstances of our lives. The source of our suffering is an internal process, a habit of the mind so deep and so pervasive that we rarely even notice it. The Pali word for this habit is upadana. It translates as clinging. grasping, or attachment. This is the subtle poison that can infect even the most profound connection. It is the force that promises security, but delivers only anxiety, and understanding its nature is the first step toward transforming it. First, we must draw a clear and unwavering line between love and attachment. They may look similar from a distance. They may even feel similar in moments of intensity, but they are fundamentally different energies, pointing in opposite directions. Love, in its purest form, what the Buddhist tradition calls metta, or loving kindness, is an expansive and unconditional wish for the well-being of another. It is a radiant warmth that flows from a full heart. It is selfless. It says, simply, I want you to be happy. Attachment, or upadana, on the other hand, is a contractive, conditional need. It is a grasping that comes from a feeling of inner poverty or lack. It is inherently self-centered. It says, I want you to make me happy. Love is a state of generosity. Attachment is a state of transaction. Love seeks to give. Attachment seeks to get. Love liberates both the giver and the receiver. Attachment imprisons them both in a cage of expectation. Imagine you are walking on a beautiful, endless beach. You bend down and scoop up a handful of warm, golden sand. It feels wonderful in your hand. This is the beginning of a connection, the joy of a new relationship. But then, a thought arises from a place of fear. This sand is so beautiful. I must not lose it. It is mine. And so, you close your hand, making a tight fist, squeezing the sand to keep it safe. But what happens? The harder you squeeze, the more the fine grains of sand are forced out between your fingers. The pressure creates a painful strain in your hand, and your attention is no longer on the beauty of the sand, but on the desperate effort of holding onto it. Soon, your hand is empty, and all you are left with is the ache of your own tension. This is attachment. It is the fearful, possessive grip that, in its effort to secure happiness, inevitably destroys it. Now, imagine a different response. You scoop up the sand, and you feel that same joy. You see its beauty, but instead of closing your hand, you keep your palm open, soft and relaxed. The sand rests there gently. You can feel its warmth, see its texture, appreciate it for exactly what it is in that moment. A gentle breeze may come and carry a few grains away, and that's okay. Your joy is not dependent on possessing every single grain. Your joy comes from the experience of holding it, from the connection itself. You are free, and the sand is free. This is love without clinging. This is the open hand, not the grasping fist. Our relationships offer us this choice in every moment. Will we squeeze, or will we open? The Buddha identified 4 primary ways that our minds engage in this act of squeezing. 4 channels through which the poison of upadana flows into our lives. By recognizing them, we can begin to loosen their grip. The first is clinging to sense pleasures. This is the most obvious form of attachment. It is the addiction to pleasant feelings that we receive through our 5 senses, and also through the mind itself, the pleasant feeling of being praised, the comfort of reassurance, the thrill of passion. In a relationship, this clinging manifests as a dependency on the other person to provide a steady stream of good feelings. And when, inevitably, those sensations change or fade, we suffer. The second channel is clinging to views. This is the attachment to our opinions, our beliefs, and our rigid ideas about how the world and other people should be. It is the mind's arrogance, its insistence that its personal map of reality is the one true territory. In our relationships, this is a catastrophic source of conflict. It is the voice of the inner tyrant, the director who has written a script for the relationship and becomes furious when the other actor fails to say their lines correctly. It says, "A loving partner must want to spend all their free time with me. A healthy couple should never argue. He should know what I need without me having to say it." We fall in love not with the real, complex, flawed human being in front of us, but with a mental image, an idealized projection. We then spend our energy trying to chisel, nag, and manipulate them into conforming to our view. This is not love. It is an act of violence against their true nature, and it creates immense suffering for both of us when they inevitably assert their own reality. The third form is clinging to rites and rituals. In the Buddha's time, this meant clinging to the belief that performing specific religious ceremonies would automatically lead to salvation. Today, it manifests as an attachment to the external forms and appearances of a relationship, mistaking them for the inner substance. It's the belief that if you perform the rituals of love, you must have the real thing. It is the anxious thought. If he doesn't post a picture of us on our anniversary, does he really love me? It's the rigid belief. A committed relationship must lead to a big wedding with a diamond ring. It is the superstition that going on a date every Friday night will keep a relationship alive, even if both people are emotionally distant during the meal. We become obsessed with the symbols, the checkboxes, the public performance of being a couple, while neglecting the actual moment-to-moment work of cultivating connection, kindness, and understanding. We cling to the menu, forgetting all about the nourishment of the food itself. The fourth and most profound form of attachment is clinging to a doctrine of a self. This is the deepest habit of the mind, the attachment to the idea that there is a permanent, solid, independent me at the center of our experience. This is the root of all other forms of clinging. In relationships, this manifests as the fusion of our identity with the other person. It is the thought behind the popular but perilous phrases, "You are my other half," or "You complete me." When our sense of self becomes entangled with our partner, any threat to the relationship, a disagreement, a period of distance, to a potential breakup is perceived not just as a loss of a loved one, but as a threat of our own annihilation. It feels like a death of the self, because we have made the other person a cornerstone of our identity. This is the very heart of codependency. It is also the seed of jealousy and possessiveness. The thought, "She is my girlfriend," comes from the delusion that another person can be a possession, an extension of this me. We are no longer two whole individuals choosing to share a path, but one fragile, composite identity, terrified of falling apart. These four types of clinging to pleasure, to views, to rituals, and to a self are the threads that weave the suffocating net of attachment. They are the engine of our suffering. The jealousy, the anxiety, the resentment, the feeling of being trapped, these are not caused by our partner's behavior. They are the direct, inevitable result of our own grasping mind. This is the most empowering realization on the spiritual path. If the problem is my own clinging, then the solution is also within me. I do not need to change the other person. I need only to learn to relax my own grip. If attachment is the poison that turns love into suffering, then what is the antidote? The Buddha offered a clear path, a way to cultivate a love that liberates instead of binds. This path begins with a radical act of courage and wisdom, the act of letting go. We have identified attachment, the grasping mind of upadana, as the poison that transforms love into suffering. So, what is the antidote? The path offered by the great spiritual traditions is not one of greater struggle, of trying harder to fix the other person or control the relationship. The path is one of release. It is the practice, the art, and the profound wisdom of letting go. When we hear these words, let go, our conditioned minds often recoil. We equate letting go with giving up, with failure, with a cold indifference or a passive resignation to defeat. We imagine it as an act of weakness, but this is a profound misunderstanding. True letting go, what in the Buddhist tradition is sometimes called nekama or renunciation, is one of the most powerful and courageous actions we can ever take. It is not giving up on the relationship. It is giving up the futile struggle that is poisoning it. It is not an act of weakness, but the highest expression of inner strength. It is the wisdom to know what is ours to hold and what is ours to release for the sake of our own peace. Letting go is not the same as indifference. Indifference is a closed and defended heart. It is a wall we build to avoid being hurt, a cold and desolate state. Letting go, on the other hand, happens with a warm and open heart. It is the spaciousness that can hold pain without being consumed by it. Letting go is not resignation. Resignation is a sigh of defeat, a feeling of helplessness. It says, I have no choice. Letting go is an empowered, conscious choice. It says, I have a choice, and I choose peace over this struggle. And letting go is not the same as forgetting. It does not mean pretending a hurt never happened or developing a convenient amnesia. The memory of a wound may remain, but letting go dissolves its power. It removes the venom from the bite, so that while the scar may still be there, it no longer throbs with constant pain. It becomes a part of our history, but it no longer dictates our present. The first and perhaps most liberating practice of letting go is to let go of our expectations. We each enter into our relationships carrying a heavy, invisible suitcase. Inside that suitcase are detailed scripts, blueprints, and instruction manuals for how the relationship and our partner should be. We have a script for the perfect romantic evening, a script for how a loved one should behave when they are sorry, a script for what they should say to make us feel secure. We spend an enormous amount of energy trying to force the living, breathing, unpredictable reality in front of us to conform to the dead script in our heads, and we suffer immensely when it does not. Letting go of expectations is the act of throwing this suitcase into the ocean. It is the conscious decision to burn the script and show up to the beautiful, messy, unwritten play of the present moment. It is the shift from expectation to curiosity. Instead of thinking, he should know that this would upset me, we can become curious. I wonder what is going on in his world that led him to do that. We put down our rigid map of how the journey should be, and we start to explore the wondrous, wild, and surprising territory that is actually here. We stop falling in love with a fantasy. and we start learning to love a real human being. The second practice is to let go of resentment. If expectations are the scripts for the future, resentments are the chains that bind us to the past. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack with you every moment of every day. Inside this backpack are rocks. Each rock is a past hurt, a grievance, an injustice, a memory of a time you were wronged. You carry this backpack into the office, to the dinner table, and even to your bed. It exhausts you. It stoops your shoulders and sours your mood. You believe, on some level, that by carrying this heavy bag of rocks, you are somehow punishing the person who hurt you. You are making sure they know the gravity of their crime. But the truth is, they are walking around freely. You are the one imprisoned by the weight of the rocks. You are the only one suffering. Holding on to resentment is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Think of an adult child who holds deep resentment towards their parents for the wounds of their childhood. Every interaction is colored by this bitterness. A simple holiday dinner is filled with unspoken tension. As the old movies of past hurts play on a loop in their mind, to let go of this resentment is not to say, "What happened to me was okay." It is absolutely not about condoning harmful behavior. It is to say, "I will no longer allow what happened in the past to poison my peace in the present. I will no longer drink this poison and hope that someone else gets sick. For the sake of my own freedom, for the sake of my own heart, I am putting down these rocks." This is a profound act of self-compassion. It is the choice to stop being a prisoner of your own history. The third, and perhaps most difficult practice, is to let go of the need to control. This is the art of surrendering to the fundamental truth of existence. The only thing you have any real control over is your own mind, your own intentions, and your own responses. We invest a staggering amount of life force in the futile attempt to control the uncontrollable. Our partner's moods, their choices, their feelings, their personal growth. It is like standing on the shore and commanding the tide not to come in. It is an exhausting and maddening struggle against reality itself. Letting go of control means recognizing where your true power lies. Imagine you are in a small boat on a vast, powerful river. The current of the river represents the flow of life, the actions and choices of others. You cannot control the current. If you try to paddle against it, you will only exhaust yourself and go nowhere. Your power is not in controlling the river, but in controlling the rudder of your own boat. You can use your wisdom and skill to navigate the currents, to steer your boat with grace, to avoid the sharp rocks and find the channels of safe passage. Letting go of the need to control the river allows you to become a master of your own vessel. It is trading the illusion of omnipotence for the reality of skillful agency. For many of us, the decision to let go can feel abstract. Our minds are so accustomed to clinging that we may need a tangible act to anchor our intention. A simple private ritual can be incredibly powerful. Take a piece of paper and a pen. Find a quiet moment where you will not be disturbed and begin to write. Write down the expectations you are holding onto that are causing you pain. Write down the resentments you are carrying, the specific hurt, the names of the people involved. Be honest. Write down all the things you are desperately trying to control. Let the paper be a vessel for the poison. Pour it all out of your heart and mind and onto the page. Do not edit or judge yourself. When you feel you are finished, read it over one last time, and then, safely, take the paper and burn it. As you watch the paper curl, turn black, and dissolve into smoke and ash, hold a clear intention in your mind. See the resentments dissolving, See the expectations turning to dust. See the need for control floating away into the vast sky. This is not a magic trick. It is a powerful, symbolic act that declares to yourself and to the universe that you are consciously choosing freedom. You are choosing to open your fist. You are choosing to put down the backpack. You are choosing peace. Letting go is the ultimate act of sanity, of wisdom, and of compassion for yourself. It is the understanding that your inner peace is too precious to be held hostage by the actions of others, by the events of the past, or by your own rigid ideas about the future. It is the brave and beautiful art of making space for something new to enter your life. Letting go in this way is a profound decision, but our minds are creatures of habit, conditioned over lifetimes to cling and to grasp. Simply deciding to let go is often not enough. We need to train the mind to release its grip, moment by moment. This training begins with learning to watch our own feelings as they arise, without judgment and without being swept away. This is the essential practice of mindfulness. We have arrived at a crucial turning point in our journey. We have made the profound decision to let go. We have chosen to open our fist, to put down the heavy backpack of the past, to release the scripts of expectation and the poisons of resentment. But a decision, no matter how sincere, is often not enough to tame a mind that has been conditioned for a lifetime to cling and to grasp. We need more than a decision. We need a practice. We need a gentle, moment-to-moment training that teaches us how to let go, not just once, but over and over again. This practice is the heart of meditation. It is the art of mindfulness. And when applied to the turbulent world of our emotions, it is the key that unlocks the prison of reactivity. This is the practice of mindfulness of feelings, or in the ancient language, Vedana, Nupassana. It is the simple, yet revolutionary, act of learning to watch the waves of emotion without drowning in them. To begin, let us embrace a powerful metaphor. Imagine that your awareness, your fundamental consciousness, is like the vast open sky. The sky is limitless, clear, and always present. It is, by its very nature, peaceful. Now imagine that your feelings, your joy, your sadness, your anger, your fear are like the weather. The weather is constantly changing. One moment, the sky is filled with brilliant sunshine and soft white clouds. The next, a dark, violent thunderstorm gathers, with flashing lightning and roaring thunder. The weather can be beautiful or terrifying, but the sky itself is never harmed by it. The sky does not try to cling to the beautiful sunset, nor does it fight and push away the storm. It simply allows the weather to arise, to be present, and to pass away in its own time. The fundamental mistake that we make as human beings is that we forget we are the sky. We believe we are the weather. When anger arises, we say, "I am angry." When sadness arises, we say, "I am sad." We identify completely with the storm, and so we are tossed and turned by its violent energy. Mindfulness is the gentle, continuous practice of remembering that we are the sky. It is the recognition that our feelings are simply temporary weather patterns passing through the vast open space of our awareness. This shift in identification from the weather to the sky is the foundation of emotional freedom. There is a classic Buddhist teaching that illustrates this perfectly, known as the parable of the two arrows. A man is walking through a forest, and suddenly, an arrow flies out from the trees and strikes him in the arm. The wound is sharp and painful. This is the first arrow. In life, there are first arrows. We cannot always avoid them. A loved one says something unkind. We receive a difficult diagnosis. We lose something or someone we cherish. This is the unavoidable pain, the inherent friction of existence. But what happens next is what truly matters. The man, struck by the first arrow, immediately reacts in panic and outrage. He cries out, "Why me? This is unbearable. I can't believe this happened." And in his frantic agitation, he picks up a second arrow and stabs himself in the very same wound. This second arrow is our own reaction to the first. It is our resistance, our resentment, our self-pity, our fear, our mental stories about the initial pain. The Buddha taught that, while the first arrow may be inevitable, the second arrow is always optional. It is the suffering that we add on top of the pain. Mindfulness practice is the art of learning to feel the sharp sting of the first arrow without picking up and using the second. It is the capacity to be with our raw primary pain without amplifying it into the prolonged agony of suffering. So how do we practice this? How do we learn to sit with the first arrow? It begins with a gentle, curious investigation of our own inner world. You can try this right now. First, bring your attention to the physical sensation of your breath. Feel the air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs, and then leaving your body. The breath is your anchor, a calm home base you can always return to. Now, allow a difficult feeling to come to mind. Perhaps it's the lingering irritation from a conversation earlier today, or a pang of sadness you've been carrying. As the feeling arises, the first step is to simply name it, to label it gently in your mind. If it's anger, you simply note, anger, there is anger here. If it's guilt, you note, guilt. This simple act of naming is incredibly powerful. It immediately creates a sliver of space. You are no longer lost in the anger. You are the one who is aware of the anger. You have shifted from being the storm to being the sky that observes the storm. The feeling is no longer a personal affliction, my anger, but rather an impersonal event, the presence of anger. The second and most crucial step is to move your attention from the mental label to the body. Where do you feel this emotion as a raw, physical sensation? This is the core of mindfulness of feelings. Drop the story, the he said, she said, and investigate the physical reality of the emotion. Where is this anger living in your body right now? Is it a hot, flushing sensation in your face and neck? Is it a tight clenching in your jaw and fists? Is it a churning, burning feeling in the pit of your stomach? Be a gentle scientist of your inner experience. Observe these sensations without judgment. You don't need to like them or want them to go away. Your only job is to watch them with a kind, steady curiosity. As you stay with these raw physical sensations, you will make a profound discovery. You will see that they are not solid or permanent. They are constantly changing. The tightness in your chest might intensify for a moment, then morph into a dull ache, then transform into a tingling sensation, and then, perhaps, fade away completely. The heat in your face will eventually cool. The churning in your stomach will settle. By watching this process, you are directly experiencing one of the fundamental truths of existence. Everything is impermanent. Anicca. Feelings arise, they stay for a while, and they pass away, all on their own. You learn that you do not have to fight your feelings or push them away. In fact, fighting them is what gives them strength and longevity. When you allow them to be, when you meet them with this spacious, embodied awareness, they naturally run their course and dissolve. This is the true meaning of letting go in practice. It is not an aggressive act of pushing away, but a gentle act of allowing to be. This is not a practice of becoming an unfeeling stone. It is the very opposite. It is learning to feel your emotions with an intimacy and clarity you have never experienced before, but without the chaotic drama of the second arrow. You learn to be with your anger without becoming aggressive. You learn to be with your sadness without sinking into despair. You learn to be with your fear without being paralyzed by it. This is the birth of emotional resilience, wisdom, and freedom. We become a safe space for our own hearts. As we practice observing our feelings with this gentle, non-judgmental awareness, we begin to see clearly how our inner states lead to our outer actions, and how those actions create consequences. We can witness the entire chain of karma unfolding in real time. We see a thought of resentment arise. We feel it manifest as a painful clenching in the heart, and we can feel the powerful urge that follows to speak a sharp, cutting word. In that moment of seeing, we are no longer a puppet of our habits. We have a choice. This direct seeing is the dawn of insight, the birth of wisdom, and the question naturally arises, now that we can see how this karmic machinery works, how can we use this wisdom to actively purify it and change its course for the better? Through the lens of mindfulness, we have learned to become quiet observers of our own inner world. We have watched the storms of emotion arise and pass away, and in doing so, we have begun to see the intricate machinery of karma at work. We can now perceive, with growing clarity, how a thought of resentment leads to a painful feeling, which in turn fuels a harmful word or action. This seeing, this insight, is profoundly liberating, but it naturally leads to a new question. Is it enough to simply watch? Now that we understand how the engine of karma works, can we do more than just observe it? Can we actively intervene, transform its course, and heal the wounds of the past? The answer offered by the great masters of the Mahayana tradition is a compassionate and resounding yes. They taught that our past actions do not have to be a life sentence. We are not irrevocably stained by our mistakes. We can, with skill and sincerity, purify the negative energies we have created. This is not a process of spiritual bypassing or ignoring our history, but one of taking full responsibility for it in a way that liberates us. The most elegant and effective method for this is a beautiful, structured practice known as the 4 powers of transformation. This is a profound technology for healing the heart. The first of these is the power of regret. It is essential that we understand this first step correctly, for it is easily confused with its toxic cousin, guilt. Guilt is a self-absorbed and paralyzing state. It is the voice that whispers, "I am a bad person. I am fundamentally flawed." Guilt is a sticky, muddy puddle that we sit and wallow in, focused entirely on our own perceived worthlessness. Intelligent regret, on the other hand, is clear-sighted and action-oriented. Regret looks at a past action and says, "That action was unskillful. That action caused harm to myself and to another. That was a mistake." Guilt focuses on the identity of the actor. Regret focuses on the quality of the action. It is the difference between lamenting that you have fallen in the mud and simply acknowledging that you fell and now need to get clean. To apply this first power is to engage in a courageous and honest life review. It requires us to drop our defenses, our excuses, and our justifications, and to look with unflinching honesty at a time we caused harm. Perhaps it was a lie we told, a promise we broke, a moment of selfishness in a relationship, or an act of cruelty born from our own pain. The power of regret is the simple, heartfelt acknowledgement of the harm done. It is a moment of profound maturity and the necessary foundation upon which all other healing is built. The second power is the power of reliance, sometimes called the power of refuge. After honestly acknowledging our mistake, we need to reorient ourselves. We need to find our true north. If we stay focused only on the negative action, we can easily fall into despair. The power of reliance is the act of turning our heart and mind towards a positive and trustworthy source of guidance. For a practicing Buddhist, this means formally taking refuge in the 3 jewels: the Buddha, as the example of a perfectly awakened being; the Dharma, as the timeless teachings of truth and reality; and the Sangha, as the community of fellow travelers on the path who support and inspire us. But this power can be understood in a universal way. It means turning towards your own highest values, your own innate goodness. It is reconnecting with the part of you that wants to be loving, that aspires to be compassionate, and to live with integrity. We all have this part of ourselves, sometimes called our Buddha nature. It is the act of saying, with sincerity, I align myself with the path of kindness. I commit myself to the path of wisdom. That is the person I want to be, and that is the direction I want my life to move in. This power lifts us out of the mud of our past mistake and points us toward a brighter shore. It provides the positive context and the motivation for the work that is to come. The third and most active of the four is the power of antidote, or remedial action. Karma means action. It is a law of cause and effect. Therefore, it is through action that we can change its course. Having acknowledged our mistake and realigned ourselves with a positive direction, we now engage in constructive actions to counteract the negative energy of the past. It is like pouring fresh, clean water into a pool of murky water. Eventually, the entire pool becomes clear. There are countless powerful antidotes. The practices of meditation, prostrations, chanting mantras, or making offerings are all considered profound methods of purification. But perhaps the most intuitive and psychologically effective antidotes are the direct opponents of the harmful act. If you have harmed someone through angry, critical words, the direct antidote is to consciously and consistently practice gentle, kind, and truthful speech. If your past actions were driven by selfishness and greed, the direct antidote is to practice generosity, volunteering your time, making a donation to a cause you believe in, or simply offering your full, listening presence to a friend in need. If you carry the karmic imprint of dishonesty, the antidote is to commit to radical truthfulness in all your affairs. This is not about mechanically paying off a karmic debt. It is about actively repatterning the pathways of your mind. By repeatedly choosing the positive, opposite action, you weaken the old, unskillful habits and build new, stronger, and more wholesome neural and karmic grooves. You are not just cleaning up a mess, you are cultivating a new way of being. The fourth and final power is the power of resolve. This power seals the practice and protects our future. Having looked at the past with regret, reoriented our heart in the present, and applied a remedial action, we now make a firm and sincere determination not to repeat the mistake. This is not about making a rigid, unrealistic vow that sets us up for failure. To declare, "I will never get angry again," is a recipe for more guilt. A wise resolve is both specific and compassionate. It might be, for the next 24 hours, I resolve not to speak a critical word about my partner. Or, for the next week, whenever I feel the urge to lie about something small, I will pause, take a breath, and tell the truth. Or, in my next conversation, I resolve to put down my phone and listen with my full attention. A wise resolve is a manageable commitment. It is a promise you make to your future self. This power transforms the purification practice from a one-time event into a continuous path of self-improvement and conscious living. Let's see how this works with our example of a person who realizes they were deeply selfish in a past relationship. First, they apply the power of regret. They reflect honestly and feel a genuine sorrow, not self-pity, thinking, "I see clearly how my focus on my own needs caused my partner to feel unseen and unloved. That action was harmful, and I regret it." Second, they apply the power of reliance. They sit quietly and connect with their heart's aspiration, saying, "I want to be a generous and loving partner. I commit myself to learning the path of compassion." Third, they apply the power of the antidote. They actively look for opportunities to practice selfless giving. They might volunteer at a homeless shelter, or simply make it a daily practice to do something kind for a family member or co-worker without seeking any recognition. They are actively creating the causes for generosity. And fourth, they apply the power of resolve. They make a specific promise. "In my current relationship, I resolve that for the next month, I will actively look for one opportunity each day to put my partner's needs before my own." This four-step process provides a complete, healing, and empowering response to past negativity. It honors the past, transforms the present, and protects the future. The four powers are a profound gift from the Buddhist path. They teach us that we are not defined by our worst moments. Our karma is not a fixed destiny written in stone. It is a dynamic, flowing process, and we have the power to influence its course. We can take responsibility for the garden of our mind, and we do not have to live with the weeds of our past forever. We can learn to skillfully remove them, enrich the soil, and prepare the ground for a new and beautiful harvest. Purifying past negative karma is a vital act of healing. It is like weeding the garden and removing the toxic stones from the soil. But a healthy garden requires more than just removing the bad. It requires the active cultivation of beautiful, nourishing plants. The highest form of love in Buddhism goes beyond just resolving debts and cleansing the past. It is an unconditional, boundless kindness that we actively grow in our hearts. This is the practice of metta. We have worked diligently to heal the past. With the 4 powers of transformation, we have learned how to look upon our mistakes with wise regret, to reorient ourselves towards the good, to apply skillful antidotes, and to walk into the future with a clear resolve. We have weeded the garden of our mind and removed the stones that were preventing growth. But a garden is not defined merely by the absence of weeds. It is defined by the beauty and vitality of what is planted there. Now, our work shifts from the remedial to the creative. We move from cleansing the past to actively cultivating the future. We begin to plant the most beautiful, fragrant, and healing flower in the entire garden of the heart. This flower is known in the ancient Pali language as metta. It is loving kindness. Metta is the radical and revolutionary practice of offering boundless, unconditional goodwill to ourselves and to all living beings. It is the definitive antidote to anger, resentment, jealousy, and fear. It is the love that expects nothing in return, and in doing so, it dissolves the entire transactional ledger of debt and obligation. Before we begin to cultivate metta, we must be very clear about what it is and what it is not. Metta is not the sentimental, possessive, or romantic love that is often the subject of songs and poems. That kind of love is frequently intertwined with attachment and the desire to be loved in return. Metta is a far more fundamental and spacious energy. It is a simple, steady, and warm-hearted benevolence. It is a profound friendliness with all of life. Furthermore, sending metta to someone does not mean that you condone their harmful actions or that you must abandon your personal boundaries. You can wish for a toxic person to be well, peaceful, and free from suffering, while simultaneously making the wise decision to keep them at a safe distance from your life. And finally, metta is not necessarily a gushing, emotional feeling that you must force yourself to experience. It is, first and foremost, an intention. It is the conscious choice to direct thoughts of goodwill, to plant seeds of kindness in the mind, with the understanding that the feelings will follow in their own time. It is a practice, a training, a strengthening of a spiritual muscle. The power of metta is not a weak or passive sentiment. It is a formidable, transformative force. There is a story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates this perfectly. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to have him killed. He arranged for the most ferocious elephant in the kingdom, an infamous beast named Nalagiri, to be intoxicated with alcohol and then unleashed upon the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. As Nalagiri was released, he went on a rampage, thundering down the street, his eyes red with rage, trumpeting furiously. The townspeople screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's own attendant, Ananda, tried to stand in front of him to protect him, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He stood perfectly still, looking at the charging, enraged elephant. He did not prepare to fight. He did not run. He simply opened his heart and radiated a powerful, concentrated, and unwavering wave of pure metta. The story says that as the furious elephant entered the field of the Buddha's loving kindness, a miracle occurred. Its intoxicated rage began to subside. Its steps slowed. The fury in its eyes was replaced by confusion, and then by calm. The great beast, now completely tamed, walked meekly to the Buddha's feet, lowered its massive head, and knelt before him. This story teaches us that loving kindness is not a fragile wish. It is a shield and a balm, a force capable of taming the most violent rage, both in the outside world and, more importantly, within our own hearts. The cultivation of metta, called metta, a systematic meditation that has been practiced for over 2.5 millennia. It is a gentle process of opening the heart in gradually expanding circles. I invite you to explore this practice now. Find a comfortable posture, either sitting in a chair or on a cushion. Allow your back to be straight but not stiff. Let your hands rest easily in your lap. You may gently close your eyes. Begin by taking 3 slow, deep breaths. With each exhalation, feel yourself letting go of any tension, any busyness, any thoughts of the day. Feel yourself arriving in this present moment. The practice of metta always begins with ourselves. It is a recognition that we cannot offer water to others from an empty well. We must first learn to offer this kindness to our own being. Silently, gently, begin to repeat a few phrases of loving kindness directed at yourself. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease." Find the words that resonate with you. As you repeat the phrases, try to connect with the intention behind them. This can be difficult for many of us. We are often our own harshest critics. If you feel resistance, or if the words feel hollow, that is perfectly okay. Simply notice that resistance with kindness. The goal is not to force a feeling, but simply to offer the intention. Stay here for a few minutes, gently offering this gift of friendliness to your own heart. Now, let the circle of metta expand. Bring to mind a person for whom you have easy and uncomplicated feelings of love and respect. This might be a dear friend, a beloved family member, a respected teacher, or even a cherished pet. Hold their image in your heart and mind, and begin to direct the phrases of metta towards them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease. As you repeat the phrases, allow your heart's natural warmth and appreciation for this being to flow outwards. Feel the joy that comes from wishing another well. Rest here for a few minutes, bathing this loved one in the light of your kindness. Next, we expand the circle again to include a neutral person. Bring to mind someone you see in your daily life but for whom you have no strong feelings, positive or negative. Perhaps it is the person who delivers your mail, a cashier at the grocery store, or someone you see on your daily commute. Often, we walk through our world in a bubble of indifference to those we don't know. This stage is a powerful antidote. Hold this person's image in your mind, and just as you did for your loved one, offer them the same sincere wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease. This practice helps to break down the artificial walls between friend and stranger, revealing our shared humanity. Now, we come to the most challenging and often most transformative stage of the practice. We gently turn our attention to a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict or for whom we feel resentment. It is wise to start with someone only mildly difficult, not the person who has caused you the deepest harm. Remember the purpose of this stage. It is a gift of freedom you give to yourself. Holding on to hatred is drinking poison and hoping the other person will suffer. This is the moment you put down the poison. With as much sincerity as you can muster, hold this person in your awareness and offer them the phrases, "May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful." You may not feel warmth. You may feel immense resistance, anger, or pain. That is okay. Do not judge yourself. Your only job is to notice the resistance and, to the best of your ability, hold the intention to wish them well. By doing so, you are not saying what they did was right. You are simply refusing to let their actions continue to imprison your heart in bitterness. You are choosing freedom. Finally, we let the circle of our heart become boundless. Imagine your metta expanding like a golden light from your chest. Let it fill the room you are in, then your entire building, your neighborhood, your city. Extend it to all people in your country, and then across the whole continent and the entire world. Send this loving kindness to all beings without exception, the old and the young, the rich and the poor, the happy and the sad. Include the animals, the beings in the sea, the birds in the air. Let it radiate out into the entire cosmos, to all beings in all realms, seen and unseen. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings live with ease. Rest for a moment in this boundless, universal love. When you are ready, gently release the practice and bring your awareness back to the feeling of your body sitting, to the sensation of your breath. The practice of metta is a profound repatterning of the mind. Each time we do it, we weaken the old habits of criticism, judgment, and resentment, and we strengthen the beautiful, liberating quality of unconditional love. It is the ultimate healing for the transactional mindset, for its very essence is a gift with no expectation of return. Practicing metta, this radical friendliness with all of existence, naturally prepares the heart for its sister quality, compassion. Metta is the wish for all beings to be happy and well. But what happens when our loving heart, now open and warm, encounters the reality of suffering in the world and in others? This is where love evolves into action. This is the birth of karuna. We have opened the heart with the warm, unconditional friendliness of metta. We have practiced wishing for ourselves and for all beings to be happy, safe, and at peace. This practice softens the soil of our mind, making it receptive and tender. But as we walk through the world with this newly opened heart, we inevitably encounter the reality of suffering. We see the pain in a loved one's eyes. We hear the news of a distant tragedy. We feel the ache of our own unresolved wounds. What happens when the warmth of metta meets the cold, hard fact of pain? It transforms. Love, when it encounters suffering, evolves into its active and engaged form. This is karuna. This is compassion. The word karuna is often described as the trembling or quivering of the heart in response to seeing suffering, but it is not a passive state of being shaken. It is that trembling, combined with the clear, courageous aspiration to see that suffering come to an end, and the motivation to help in whatever way we can. It is love in action. In our journey to cultivate compassion, it is vital to first distinguish it from its close relative, empathy. Empathy is the natural human capacity to resonate with another's feelings, to feel what they feel. It is the foundation of connection, and it is a beautiful quality. However, empathy alone can be a treacherous path. If we simply absorb the pain, anxiety, and despair of others without a sense of wisdom or agency, we can fall into a state of empathic distress or burnout. We become so overwhelmed by the suffering we feel that we are paralyzed by it, and we end up drowning alongside the person we are trying to help. Imagine a friend has fallen into a deep, dark pit. Empathy is jumping into the pit with them and saying, "I am here with you. It is truly awful down here." Compassion, however, stands firmly at the edge of the pit. It calls down, "I see you. I am here with you, and I feel your pain." Then it finds a ladder and lowers it down, saying, "Let me help you find a way out." Compassion includes the resonance of empathy, but it is fortified with the strength, wisdom, and loving intention to alleviate the suffering, not just to share in it. It maintains the clarity needed to be of genuine service. As we practice cultivating karuna, we must also become aware of its enemies, both the obvious and the subtle. The far enemy of compassion is easy to recognize. It is cruelty. the desire to cause harm. But the near enemy is far more deceptive, for it is an imposter that looks and feels very much like the real thing. The near enemy of compassion is pity. On the surface, pity may seem like a kind response to suffering, but if we look closely, pity is rooted in a sense of separation and superiority. Pity looks down from above and says, "Oh, you poor, unfortunate thing." It reinforces the chasm between me, the one who is okay, and you, the one who is not. It can feel condescending and disempowering to the person receiving it. True compassion, karuna, arises from a recognition of fundamental equality. It meets the other person at eye level. It says, "I see your suffering, and I recognize it as a part of the human condition, a pain that I also know or could know. We are in this together." Pity creates distance. Compassion creates connection. Being mindful of this distinction is essential if we truly wish to help, rather than simply reinforcing our own sense of being separate and fortunate. Perhaps the most profound and challenging application of karuna is to extend it to those who have harmed us. Our immediate, conditioned response to being hurt is anger, resentment, and the desire for retribution. How is it possible to feel compassion for someone we consider our enemy? The path to this radical transformation of the heart lies in a shift of perspective. It requires us to look beyond the harmful action and see the suffering that was its source. Happy, peaceful, and whole people do not go around causing harm. Hurt people hurt people. The person who betrayed you, who lied to you, who treated you with cruelty, was acting from their own deep well of inner suffering. Their actions were driven by their own ignorance, their own blinding fear, their own insatiable greed, or their own consuming hatred. They are caught in the prison of their own mind, trapped in painful patterns that compel them to create negative karma, which will only bring them more suffering in the future. To see this is not to excuse their behavior. The harm they caused is real and should not be denied or minimized. But this perspective changes our relationship to the harm. We begin to see the perpetrator not as a two-dimensional monster, but as a deeply flawed and suffering human being. The heat of our anger begins to cool, replaced by a kind of sad wisdom. The question in our heart shifts from the personal cry of, "How could you do this to me?" to the universal inquiry of, "What must it be like to be so lost, so full of pain, that you would act in such a way?" This perspective is the ultimate antidote to the poison of resentment. It is the only way to truly free ourselves from the chains of the past. Anger cannot long survive in a heart that is filled with this kind of deep, sorrowful understanding. In the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, the perfect embodiment of this boundless compassion is the great Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara, known in Vietnam as Quan Thế Âm. The legends say that Avalokiteshvara was a being of such profound wisdom that they stood at the very threshold of nirvana, the final liberation from all suffering. But as they were about to enter this state of perfect peace, they heard the cries of the countless suffering beings still trapped in the world. And in that moment, a compassion so immense arose in their heart that they made a profound vow to postpone their own final peace and remain in the world, working tirelessly until every last being has been liberated from suffering. This bodhisattva is often depicted with 1,000 arms, each ready to help in any way needed, and in the palm of each hand is an eye, representing the wisdom to see the true nature of suffering and its cause. This is not just a beautiful myth, it is a representation of the highest potential of our own heart. To cultivate karuna is to walk the path of the bodhisattva in our own lives, using our own 2 arms and 2 eyes to alleviate whatever suffering we can, wherever we find it. Compassion, then, is the active expression of love in a world that contains pain. It is the heart's trembling response to suffering, fortified by wisdom and empowered by the sincere wish to help. It allows us to connect with the pain of others without being destroyed by it. It allows us to offer help that is rooted in solidarity, not superiority. And in its most profound application, it allows us to find peace and understanding even in relation to those who have caused us the greatest harm. It is the practical and courageous application of metta in our daily lives, transforming a simple wish for happiness into a powerful force for healing in the world. When we cultivate metta, we learn to wish for happiness. When we cultivate karuna, we learn to wish for the end of suffering. This practice attunes our hearts to the states of others, and this naturally leads to a new capacity, the ability to feel joy not just for our own good fortune, but for the good fortune of others as well. This is a profound shift away from the transactional mindset and the poisons of jealousy and comparison. This is the world of mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have learned to open our hearts with the unconditional friendliness of metta, wishing for all beings to be happy. We have learned to meet their pain with the trembling, active response of karuna, or compassion. Our heart is becoming a more tender, more engaged and more courageous space. But now we arrive at a practice that, for many of us in this modern world of relentless comparison, can feel even more challenging than compassion. It is one thing to feel for another's suffering. It is another thing entirely to feel genuine, unadulterated joy for another's happiness and success. This rare and precious quality of the heart is called mudita. It is sympathetic or appreciative joy. Mudita is the heart's celebration. It is the ultimate antidote to the poisons of jealousy, envy, and the scarcity mindset that tell us that another's good fortune somehow diminishes our own. It is the discovery of a boundless source of happiness, a joy that is not dependent on our own personal circumstances, but on the shared happiness of all beings. At the root of jealousy and envy lies a deep-seated and painful illusion, the belief in scarcity. We are conditioned by our culture to see life as a zero-sum game. We believe there is only so much happiness, so much success, so much love, so much recognition to go around. We see it as a finite pie. So, when someone else gets a large slice of promotion, a beautiful relationship, a creative breakthrough, our first instinctive thought is, that means there is less for me. Their success feels like our failure. Their light feels like it casts a shadow upon us. This scarcity mindset traps us in a constant state of competition and comparison. We scroll through the highlight reels of other people's lives on social media, and with every smiling photo and announcement of success, our own sense of worth subtly erodes. It is a recipe for perpetual dissatisfaction. Mudita offers a radical cure to this disease of the spirit. It is the practice of shifting from a scarcity mindset to one of boundless abundance. Mudita understands that happiness is not a finite resource. It is infinite. Love is not a pie with limited slices. It is an ever-burning flame. Lighting another's candle with your own does not diminish your flame. It doubles the amount of light in the room. Another person's success does not block your path. It illuminates the path, showing what is possible for all of us. When we can genuinely feel happy for another person's good fortune, we tap into an inexhaustible well of joy. Our chances for happiness are no longer limited to the infrequent moments of our own personal victories. Suddenly, every success, every moment of joy, every bit of good luck experienced by anyone, anywhere, becomes a reason for our own heart to celebrate. It is the ultimate expansion of our capacity for joy. Like metta, mudita is a quality that can be consciously cultivated. It is a muscle of the heart that gets stronger with practice. We can begin this training gently. The first step, paradoxically, is to practice mudita for ourselves. It is difficult to feel happy for others if we are constantly criticizing ourselves. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Think of one small thing you did well recently, one moment of kindness you showed, one small obstacle you overcame. Perhaps you handled a difficult conversation with patience. Perhaps you finished a task you had been procrastinating on. Allow yourself to feel a quiet, warm sense of appreciation for this. Not boastful pride, but a gentle, joyful acknowledgement of your own goodness and effort. This self-appreciation is the seed from which all other centered joy can grow. Next, we expand the circle to a close friend. Bring to mind someone you love dearly and think of something wonderful that has recently happened in their life. Perhaps they landed their dream job, or fell in love, or recovered from an illness. Hold their happy face in your mind. Instead of letting any flicker of comparison or "what about me" enter your thoughts, make a conscious choice to share in their joy. Feel their excitement. Feel their relief. Let their happiness bring a genuine smile to your own face. Silently, you can offer the wish, "How wonderful for you. May your happiness and good fortune continue and increase." Feel how this act of selfless celebration connects you to them in a deeper, more beautiful way. Then, we expand the circle of joy further to a neutral person. Think of an acquaintance, a neighbor, or even someone you read about in the news who has experienced some success or happiness. Notice the mind's default tendency, which is often indifference or even a subtle form of criticism. Gently let go of that habit and replace it with a simple thought of appreciation. How wonderful for them. I am happy that they are happy. This practice begins to break down the walls of our indifference and helps us to see the world as a place filled with opportunities for shared joy. The most advanced and transformative stage of the practice is to try and generate mudita for someone whose success triggers our envy or jealousy. This could be a professional rival, or someone we perceive as being more fortunate than we are. This is deep inner work. The first step is to mindfully acknowledge the painful feeling of envy as it arises. Don't suppress it or judge yourself for it. Simply note, there is envy. This is the first arrow. Then, instead of picking up the second arrow of resentful thoughts, you can make a courageous choice. You can try to find one authentic thing to appreciate about their success. You might think, they must have worked incredibly hard to achieve that, or their success will bring happiness and security to their family. You don't have to pretend to feel ecstatic for them, but by planting a single seed of appreciation in the barren ground of your envy, you begin a process of inner alchemy. You are consciously choosing connection over comparison and freedom over the bitterness that corrodes your own heart. Nowhere is the practice of mudita more important than in our most intimate relationships. A lack of mudita can turn loving partners into secret competitors. One partner's career success can feel like a threat to the other's ego. One person's spiritual growth can make the other feel as if they are being left behind. The relationship becomes a subtle power struggle, tainted by scorekeeping and silent resentment. A relationship that is rich in mudita, however, is a true partnership. It is a space of unwavering mutual support. When one partner succeeds, it is a victory for the team. Their joy is not a source of envy, but a shared resource that nourishes and uplifts the relationship itself. You become each other's greatest cheerleader. This creates an unshakable foundation of trust, generosity, and shared celebration. Imagine you are at work, and you hear that a colleague has just received the promotion that you were also hoping for. The first arrow is the immediate, sinking feeling in your stomach, the hot flush of jealousy and disappointment. The voice in your head starts its litany of complaint. It's not fair. I worked harder. I deserved it more. This is the well-worn path of suffering, but there is another path available. You can feel that initial pang of envy, and you can meet it with mindfulness. Envy is here. This feeling is painful. You take a breath, and then you make a choice. You walk over to your colleague, look them in the eye, and offer a genuine, heartfelt congratulations. You ask them about their new role, and you listen. You make an effort to feel the excitement and relief that they are feeling. In that moment of conscious, chosen action, something magical happens. the painful, contractive energy of envy begins to dissolve, replaced by the warm, expansive energy of connection and shared humanity. You have single-handedly transformed a poisonous inner state into a moment of grace. Mudita is the heart's capacity to celebrate. It is the definitive cure for the scarcity mindset that keeps us feeling small, insecure, and isolated. It allows us to be inspired by the greatness of others, rather than diminished by it. When we can learn to delight in the happiness of all beings, we discover a source of joy that is limitless, for we will always have a reason to be happy. It is the joyful expression of a heart that is truly free, truly generous, and truly at peace. We have cultivated love for all beings with metta. We have learned to meet their suffering with the active compassion of karuna. We now know how to celebrate their joys with the selfless delight of mudita. Our heart is now open, engaged, and celebratory. But to hold all of this, the love, the pain, the joy without being constantly thrown off balance, we need a fourth, stabilizing quality. We need the unshakable calm and profound wisdom of upekkha, or equanimity. We have journeyed through the sublime landscapes of the heart. We began by planting the seeds of metta, learning to offer unconditional, friendly love to ourselves and all beings. We learned to meet the inevitable reality of pain with the active, trembling heart of karuna, or compassion. We then discovered the boundless source of joy available in mudita, the selfless celebration of another's good fortune. Our heart is now open, engaged, and capable of great love and celebration. But to hold all of this, to contain the immense joy and the immense sorrow of the world without being constantly shattered, we need a fourth, final quality. This quality is the foundation upon which the other three rest. It is their guardian and their balance point. It is the profound, unshakable peace of upekkha, or equanimity. It is the art of loving completely, of caring deeply, without losing yourself in the storm. Equanimity is perhaps the most misunderstood of these four sublime states. The word can conjure an image of someone who is cold, aloof, distant, and uncaring. But this is not equanimity. This is its near enemy, the subtle imposter known as indifference. Indifference is a defense mechanism. It is a heart that has been closed down to avoid pain. It is the voice that says, "I don't care," as a way to protect itself. It is a state of disconnection. Equanimity, or upekkha, is the very opposite. It is a state of profound connection and radical presence. The heart is completely open, feeling everything, but it is not thrown off balance by the changing tides of pleasure and pain, praise and blame, success and failure. Imagine a great, ancient, deeply rooted tree. The tree is not indifferent to the weather. It feels the warmth of the sun, the bite of the frost, the gentle caress of the breeze, and the violence of the storm. Yet, it is not uprooted. It remains stable, grounded, and present through all seasons. Indifference is a stone, which feels nothing. Equanimity is the ancient tree, which feels everything but remains unshaken. This unshakable quality is born from a deep wisdom, specifically the wisdom of understanding karma. The equanimous mind understands and deeply respects that every being is the owner of their own actions. Every individual is walking their own unique path, a path shaped by their own past and present choices. While we can walk alongside them, we cannot walk the path for them. We cannot learn their lessons for them. We cannot carry their karmic burdens for them. This understanding is the supreme antidote to the savior complex, the anxious need to fix other people that is so central to codependency. Lacking equanimity, the rescuer jumps into the other person's drama, becoming entangled in their chaos, trying desperately to control their choices and shield them from consequences. This kind of help is often driven by our own anxiety and need for control, and it can ultimately rob the other person of their own strength and dignity. There is a Zen story that illustrates this wisdom perfectly. A young, eager student is crossing a swift and powerful river as his master watches from the bank. Halfway across, the student loses his footing and is swept away by the current, flailing and panicking. The other students on the shore grow frantic, shouting to the master, "Master, do something! Help him! He's going to drown!" The Zen master, however, remains perfectly calm. He watches his student struggle with a focused, unwavering attention, but he does not move. He sees the student, after much terror and useless struggle, finally stop fighting the river. The student learns to relax, to use the current, and eventually manages to make his way to the other side, where he collapses, exhausted but alive. Only then does the master calmly cross the river to help him. The frantic students ask, "Master, why did you wait so long? He could have died." The master replies, "If I had rescued him at the first sign of trouble, I would have robbed him of a priceless lesson. He would have learned that someone will always save him. Instead, he learned the nature of the river, the nature of fear, and the nature of his own inner strength. I was always watching, and I was ready to intervene if his life was in true danger, but I had to honor his journey." This is upekkha. It is the wisdom to know when to act and when to allow. It is caring deeply, but with a profound respect for the karmic path of another. This stable, spacious state of mind is the true foundation for effective help. When our desire to help is driven by our own emotional reactivity, your anxiety about their pain, our fear of their failure, our personal need for them to be okay or help, is often tainted. We give advice that is meant to soothe our own fears. We offer support that is actually a form of control. We enable destructive behavior because we cannot bear the discomfort of setting a boundary. Our actions are clouded by our own attachments, but when we can act from a place of upekkha, our mind is clear. We are able to see the situation as it is, without the distortion of our own emotional needs. Because we are not attached to the outcome, we can offer help that is truly for the benefit of the other person, not for ourselves. We can listen deeply without feeling the compulsive need to offer a solution. We can provide a calm, non-anxious presence, which is often the most profoundly healing gift we can give. We can offer our love and support as a gift, not as a tool to engineer a specific result. Upekkha, then, is the crowning jewel of the four immeasurables. It is the quiet, serene, and spacious heart that holds everything in a loving embrace. It holds the joy of mudita without becoming attached to success. It holds the pain that evokes karuna without being overwhelmed by despair. It holds the boundless friendliness of metta without demanding anything in return. Upekkha is not about loving less. It is about loving with the vastness and wisdom of the sky itself. It is the peace that passeth all understanding, the freedom of a heart that has let go of the struggle against reality and has chosen instead to meet every moment with balance, wisdom, and unshakable grace. With these four sublime qualities fully understood, the boundless love of metta, the active compassion of karuna, the selfless joy of mudita, and the unshakable balance of upekkha, now possess a complete toolkit for transforming the heart. We have learned to cultivate a love that is truly boundless and free. But how do we apply this profound inner stability to the most painful and stubborn knots of our past? What happens when this wise and open heart must face the deep hurt of betrayal or abandonment? How does an equanimous mind approach the difficult and often misunderstood act of forgiveness? We have journeyed through the four sublime states of the heart, cultivating a love, compassion, joy, and balance that can hold the immense complexity of life. We have equipped ourselves with a profound inner toolkit. Now we must turn and face the most stubborn ghosts of our past. What do we do when this open, wise, and equanimous heart is confronted with the memory of a deep wound of betrayal, an abandonment, an act of cruelty that has shaped our lives? The path forward is through the courageous and profoundly misunderstood act of forgiveness. Forgiveness in the spiritual sense, is not what we think it is. It is not an act of weakness, nor is it a gift we begrudgingly give to the person who hurt us. It is the ultimate act of self-liberation. It is the moment we decide that our own peace is more important than our grievance. It is the key we use to unlock our own prison cell. Before we can walk through the door of forgiveness, we must first dismantle the myths that block the way. The first and most powerful myth is that to forgive is to condone. We believe that by forgiving, we are sending a message that the harmful action was acceptable. This is fundamentally untrue. Forgiveness is not an excuse for bad behavior. You can forgive someone completely while simultaneously acknowledging, with absolute clarity, that what they did was wrong, harmful, and unacceptable. You can forgive a person for their betrayal while never trusting them again. The second myth is that forgiveness means forgetting. We fear that if we forgive, we will somehow develop amnesia and become vulnerable to being hurt in the same way again. Forgiveness is not about erasing a memory. It is about dissolving its emotional charge. The memory of the wound may always remain as a part of your story, but it no longer has the power to dictate your emotional state. It transforms from a hot, burning coal that sears you every time you touch it, into a cool, smooth stone that you can look at, learn from, and carry without being burned. The third great myth is that forgiveness requires reconciliation. We believe we cannot forgive someone unless we are willing to welcome them back into our lives. But forgiveness is an entirely internal process. It happens in the sanctuary of your own heart. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is an interpersonal process. It requires two people, one who has earned back trust through changed behavior, and one who is willing to offer that trust again. You are only in control of your half of the equation. You can forgive someone completely and, from a place of wisdom and self-protection, choose never to speak to them again. You are releasing them from the prison of your anger, not inviting them back into your home. So, if forgiveness is not about the other person, then what is its true purpose? Forgiveness is for you. It is the ultimate act of self-love. Holding on to anger, resentment, and a thirst for revenge is like drinking a cup of poison every day and waiting for the other person to die. The bitterness corrodes only one life, your own. It is a terrible and exhausting burden. Imagine you are chained to the person who hurt you. The chains are forged from your own anger and resentment. You cannot move freely. You cannot walk into a new relationship without dragging the weight of the old one with you. Every new experience is tainted by the bitterness of the past. Forgiveness is the act of taking a pair of bolt cutters and severing those chains. The other person may go on their way, unaffected. That is not your concern. Your concern is your own freedom. You are finally able to walk away, unburdened, into the sunshine of your own life. The cost of not forgiving is immense. It is a tax levied on your present-day happiness to pay for a debt from the past. Forgiveness is the decision to stop paying that tax. It is the declaration that you, and you alone, are the master of your own peace of mind. Because it is such a profound act, forgiveness is rarely a single event. It is not a switch that you flip from unforgiven to forgiven. More often, it is a gradual process, a journey with many steps. The first step is to allow yourself to fully acknowledge the pain. You cannot heal a wound by pretending it isn't there. You must give yourself permission to feel the full spectrum of your hurt, the anger, the sadness, the grief, the sense of injustice. This is the mindful practice of being with the first arrow. You allow the raw pain to be present without judgment, giving your heart the space it needs to be heard. The second step is to clearly see the cost of your unforgiveness. You must honestly assess the price you are paying for holding onto your grudge. How does it affect your body, your sleep, your current relationships? Does it make you cynical and distrustful? By clearly seeing the suffering that your resentment is causing you, you build the powerful motivation needed to let it go. The third step is the conscious choice. Forgiveness begins with a clear intention. You might not feel forgiving in that moment. The anger may still feel hot and justified, but you can make a choice from a place of wisdom. You can say to yourself, I no longer want to suffer in this way. I choose to embark on the path of forgiveness for my own sake. I am willing to become free. This intention is the rudder that will steer you through the difficult waters ahead. The fourth step is to actively cultivate understanding. This is where the practice of compassion, or karuna, becomes essential. You make an effort to see the suffering in the person who harmed you. What fears, what ignorance, what pain was driving them? Again, this does not excuse their action, but it begins to shift it from a malicious, personal attack into the tragic unfolding of another human being's own suffering. This perspective loosens the grip of personal grievance. Finally, there is the act of release itself. This is a personal ritual, and it can take many forms. For some, the most powerful method is to write a letter. You take a pen and paper, and you write everything down, holding nothing back. You describe the betrayal in detail. You express all your rage, your pain, your disappointment. You pour all the poison onto the page, and then, at the end of the letter, you write a declaration of release. You can write, I have carried this burden for long enough. For the sake of my own heart, I now release you. I release myself from the poison of this anger. I set myself free. And then you take this letter and you safely burn it or tear it into tiny pieces and let it go in the wind. You watch the physical form of your pain dissolve, symbolizing the inner release you have chosen. Imagine a woman who was deeply betrayed by her best friend many years ago. For a decade, she lives in a prison of bitterness. The betrayal replays in her mind constantly. She finds it impossible to trust new friends, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. One day, she realizes with a shock that her friend is likely living her life, while she remains a voluntary prisoner of the past. This is her turning point. She begins the process. She allows herself to grieve the loss of the friendship, crying for days. She writes a long, furious, tear-stained letter that she will never send, detailing every ounce of her pain. Then, she begins to practice metta. She starts with herself, offering herself the kindness she needs. Then, with enormous difficulty, she tries to send a sliver of compassion to her former friend, not condoning the action, but seeing the insecurity and fear that must have driven it. Finally, she burns the letter, and as she watches the ashes scatter, she feels a quiet shift inside. It is not a lightning bolt. It is the simple absence of a heavy weight she didn't even realize she was carrying. She is lighter. She is free. She has forgiven, not because her friend deserved it, but because she did. This profound act of forgiveness cleanses the inner world, freeing us from the chains of the past. It creates a spacious and peaceful ground within our own hearts. But how do we prevent new wounds from forming? How do we take this inner peace and use it to build healthier, more conscious relationships in the present moment? The key lies in moving from inner healing to outer skill. It begins with the way we use our words. It begins with the practice of wise speech. The profound internal act of forgiveness cleanses the heart, freeing us from the heavy chains of the past. It establishes a ground of peace and spaciousness within us. But this inner peace is not an end in itself. It is the stable foundation from which we can learn to engage with the world in a new, more skillful way. Having healed our inner world, we now turn to the question of how we can build healthier, more conscious relationships in the present, and how we can avoid creating the very wounds that require forgiveness in the future. Our primary tool for this sacred work is our speech. Our words are like seeds. With them, we can plant gardens of understanding, trust, and intimacy, or we can sow fields of discord, pain, and separation. The Buddhist path offers a clear, compassionate, and profoundly practical guide to using our words for healing. This is the practice of samma vaca, or wise speech. It is not a restrictive set of rules, but a powerful contemplative practice that transforms our communication from a source of conflict into a vehicle for connection. The ancient teachings present us with a beautiful framework for this practice, often called the four gates of wise speech. Before we speak, we are encouraged to mindfully pass our intended words through these four gates. If they cannot pass through all four, then silence is the wiser, more compassionate choice. The first gate is the gate of truth. Before you speak, you ask yourself, is what I am about to say true? This is the bedrock of all skillful communication. It is a commitment to abandon falsehood, exaggeration, and the subtle distortions we use to protect our ego or manipulate a situation. Without this foundation of truthfulness, no real trust can ever be built. If the words are indeed true, they arrive at the second gate, the gate of benefit. Here, we must ask, is what I am about to say useful or beneficial? There are many things that may be true, but are utterly useless or even harmful to say. Voicing every critical thought, pointing out every minor flaw in another person, or dredging up a past mistake for no constructive purpose, are all examples of truths that fail to pass this gate. This gate asks us to consider the purpose of our speech. Is it intended to help, to heal, to clarify, or to connect? Or is it simply to vent, to wound, or to prove that we are right? This gate filters out the immense amount of speech that serves no wholesome purpose. If our words are both true and beneficial, they come to the third gate, the gate of kindness. Here, we must inquire into the tone and intention behind our words. We ask, can I say this in a kind, gentle, and endearing way? This is where the heart of metta, or loving kindness, enters our communication. It is possible to speak a hard truth, but to do so with such softness and care that it can be received by the other person. This gate filters out harshness, sarcasm, yelling, and the cold, cutting tone of contempt. It ensures that our words, even when they carry a difficult message, are delivered as a peace offering, not as a weapon. Finally, even if our words are true, beneficial, and can be spoken kindly, they must pass through the fourth and final gate, the gate of right timing. We must ask ourselves, is this the right moment to speak? The wisest words spoken at the wrong time can be disastrous. To offer constructive feedback when someone is exhausted and emotionally fragile, to bring up a serious issue just as they are rushing out the door, or to try and resolve a conflict in the midst of a heated argument, is unskillful. This gate requires the utmost sensitivity. It asks us to be mindful not just of our own need to speak, but of the other person's capacity to listen. Sometimes, the wisest and kindest action is to wait, to allow the emotional storm to pass, and to choose a moment of calm and receptivity to have a meaningful conversation. Complementing these four gates is a clear guide to the four types of harmful speech we must practice abandoning. The first is lying, the direct opposite of truthfulness. The second is slanderous or divisive speech, words used to set one person against another. This includes malicious gossip or complaining about a partner to a third party in a way that undermines their character and creates unhealthy alliances. The third is harsh speech. This is not just obvious verbal abuse like shouting and name-calling, but also the more subtle forms of aggression like biting sarcasm, mockery, and a tone of contempt, which the research psychologist John Gottman has identified as the single greatest predictor of divorce. The fourth is idle chatter. While it may seem harmless, aimless talk that is devoid of real meaning can drain our energy, lead us into gossip and criticism, and create a kind of superficial noise that prevents real, heartfelt connection from occurring. Knowing what to avoid is helpful, but how do we actively practice wise speech when we need to communicate something difficult? How do we express our needs, our boundaries, or our hurt feelings without starting a war? There is a beautiful and effective framework, often used in modern psychology, that aligns perfectly with the principles of wise speech. It is a way of speaking our truth with compassion. It involves 4 steps. First, we begin with a neutral, factual observation of a specific behavior, avoiding judgment and exaggeration. Second, we express the feeling that was triggered in us by that behavior, taking full ownership of our emotion. Third, we identify the universal need within us that was not being met. And fourth, we make a clear, positive, and doable request. Let us see how this works with a common example. Now, let's try to communicate the same need by passing it through the 4 gates, using our new framework. We wait for a calm moment, right timing. We start with a neutral observation. When I'm sharing something about my day, and I see you looking at your phone, this is true. We then take ownership of our feeling. I feel unimportant and a little sad. This is also true, and spoken kindly, without accusation. We identify the need because connecting with you at the end of the day is really important to me. This is beneficial, as it explains the why behind our feeling. And finally, we make a clear request. Would you be willing to put your phone down for 10 minutes so we can just catch up? This is wise speech in action. It is honest, kind, beneficial, and spoken at a time when it can be heard. It does not attack the other person's character. It simply describes our own inner experience and makes a request. It is a bridge to connection, not a weapon of war. Our words have the power to create heavens of intimacy and hells of conflict. They are the instruments we play in the orchestra of our relationships. Wise speech is not about being timid or inauthentic. It is the very opposite. It is about having the courage to be vulnerable, the skill to be clear, and the compassion to be kind, all at the same time. It is the practice of aligning our words with our deepest intention, the intention to understand and be understood, to heal and to connect. Speaking wisely, with truth and kindness, is one wing of the bird of skillful communication. But a bird cannot fly with only one wing. The other wing, equally powerful and often more neglected, is the art of listening. How can we learn to listen in a way that heals the speaker, a way that creates a space so safe that truth can be spoken without fear? This is the practice of deep listening. We have learned to practice wise speech, to use our words as instruments of truth, kindness, and healing. This is one wing of the bird of skillful communication, the expressive wing that allows our intentions to fly out into the world with grace. But a bird cannot fly with only one wing. To create true balance, connection, and understanding, we must cultivate the other wing, a practice that is equally powerful, yet far more rare and neglected in our busy world. This is the receptive wing, the profound and sacred practice of deep listening. As taught by the great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, this is not merely the passive act of hearing sounds. It is an active spiritual practice, a form of meditation in which we offer the most precious gift we have, our full, non-judgmental, and compassionate presence. It is the art of listening in such a way that the other person feels safe enough to empty their heart, and in doing so, to suffer less. Our usual mode of listening is not really listening at all. It is waiting to speak. As the other person talks, our mind is furiously active. We are filtering their words through our own opinions and experiences. Our inner commentator is providing a running narration. I agree with that. Oh, I disagree with that completely. That's not what happened. Here's what they should have done. This reminds me of a story about myself that I can't wait to share. We are formulating our rebuttal, preparing our defense, crafting our brilliant advice. Our brain is in reply mode, not receive mode. We are so busy with our own inner noise that we miss the delicate, subtle, and most important parts of what is being communicated. We hear their words, but we miss their heart. Deep listening asks us to do something radical, to set aside our own agenda completely. The primary intention of this practice is not to fix, not to advise, not to debate, and not to interject our own story. The primary intention is simply to help the other person suffer less. To do this, we must become a safe container. Imagine your presence as a wide, empty, and beautifully crafted bowl. You offer this empty bowl to the other person, and with your silent, focused attention, you invite them to pour the contents of their heart into it. Their confusion, their pain, their anger, their joy. Your job is not to analyze, judge, or change what they pour in. Your job is simply to hold the container steady, to receive it all with unwavering acceptance. When we can offer this kind of spacious presence, a miracle often occurs. The other person, in the act of emptying their heart into a safe and non-judgmental space, begins to hear themselves for the first time. In the process of speaking, they often discover their own wisdom and find their own solutions. Our silence, our presence, becomes the catalyst for their own healing. This practice also involves learning to listen with more than just our ears. Words are only the tip of the iceberg of human communication. The vast mass of meaning, the emotions, the needs, the vulnerabilities lies hidden beneath the surface of the words. Deep listening is the art of attuning ourselves to these unspoken layers. It is listening with our whole being. We listen for the feeling that is being carried on the river of their words. Is their tone sharp with anger? Is it trembling with sadness? Is it tight with fear? We learn to listen past the story and hear the emotion. Even more deeply, we can learn to listen for the unmet need that is crying out from behind the emotion. An angry outburst might be a desperate cry for respect. A litany of complaints might be a plea for connection and support. An expression of anxiety might reveal a deep need for safety and reassurance. When we can learn to hear this deeper layer, our ability to respond with wisdom and compassion grows exponentially. There is no more powerful example of this than in the relationship between a parent and a child. Imagine a teenager overwhelmed by the pressures of their life, shouting at their mother, "You don't understand anything. I hate it here." The typical, reactive response would be for the mother to defend herself. "Don't you dare speak to me like that, after everything I do for you." In that moment, two defensive walls go up, and all possibility for connection is lost. The interaction becomes a battle. But imagine if the mother, in that moment, chooses to practice deep listening. She hears the harsh words, the first arrow, but instead of reacting, she takes a breath and listens more deeply. Behind the anger, she senses the vast loneliness of her child. Behind the hateful words, she feels the profound pain of feeling misunderstood. She realizes the outburst is not a personal attack, but a desperate signal of suffering. So, instead of meeting anger with anger, she meets the anger with a compassionate inquiry into the suffering. She might say, quietly and calmly, "It sounds like you feel completely alone and misunderstood right now. That must be so painful. I'm here. Can you tell me more about what's happening? Can you feel the difference?" The mother has not reacted to the words on the surface. She has responded to the pain underneath. She has refused to engage in a battle and has instead created a sanctuary. In the face of this unexpected softness, the teenager's anger has nowhere to go. Their defensive walls crumble, often dissolving into tears, and the real story, the story of their fear, their insecurity, their pain can finally be told. The mother healed the entire situation, not with clever words, but with the power of her silent, compassionate, and deep listening. This is a skill that we can all cultivate. It requires patience and intention. The practice can be simplified into a few key reminders. First, make the conscious decision to silence your inner commentator. Intend to just receive. Second, offer your gentle, steady presence. This might mean putting down your phone, turning away from your computer, and turning your body to face the person speaking. Third, and this is perhaps the most difficult, resist the urge to interrupt. Trust that the other person has the wisdom to navigate their own feelings if you just give them the space. Let silence be a part of the conversation, It is in the pauses that a person often finds their deepest truths. Finally, you can occasionally reflect back what you are hearing, not your interpretation, but their feeling or their meaning. Simple phrases like, "So it sounds like you felt really betrayed when that happened," or "I'm hearing how exhausted you are," can be incredibly validating. It lets the speaker know that they have truly been seen and heard. Deep listening is one of the most profound acts of love we can offer another human being. It is the practice of setting aside our own ego, our own needs, and our own stories, and offering the pure, selfless gift of our full attention. When combined with the skill of wise speech, it equips us with the two wings needed for truly conscious and compassionate communication. When we combine the skill of wise speech with the art of deep listening, we possess a powerful set of tools to untangle even the most difficult karmic knot. We can, with patience and practice, transform conflict into connection. But what if a relationship is fundamentally toxic? What if, despite our best efforts at skillful communication, the dynamic remains one of harm or abuse? Does a compassionate, karmic understanding mean we are obligated to stay and endure it? This brings us to the courageous and vital topic of establishing healthy boundaries. We have armed ourselves with the beautiful and effective tools of wise speech and deep listening. In a relationship where both partners are willing to engage with sincerity, these skills can untangle the most stubborn knots of misunderstanding and transform a field of conflict into a garden of connection. But this leads us to a difficult and vital question. What happens when the other person is unwilling or unable to change? What happens when, despite our best efforts, a relationship remains a place of consistent harm, disrespect, or abuse? Does a compassionate understanding of karma mean that we are obligated to stay and endure it? This is a dangerous misconception that can trap people in cycles of suffering for years or even lifetimes. The answer, from a place of true wisdom and compassion, is an unequivocal no. The path of awakening is a path of liberation from suffering, not a life sentence to endure it. And sometimes, the most courageous, compassionate, and spiritually necessary act we can perform is to establish a firm and healthy boundary. We often think of boundaries as walls we build to push people away, as acts of anger or rejection. But in the light of wisdom, a healthy boundary is a profound act of compassion. It is an act of dual compassion, protecting both yourself and the other person. Firstly, a boundary is an act of compassion for yourself. It is a clear and loving declaration that your safety, your sanity, and your well-being are sacred. It is the moment you stop betraying yourself to appease another. It is the ultimate expression of self-respect, a statement that says, "I love myself enough to not allow myself to be harmed." This is not selfish. It is the necessary foundation for any healthy life. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot love others freely if you are constantly being drained and diminished. Secondly, and this is a more subtle but equally profound point, a boundary is an act of compassion for the person causing harm. By refusing to participate in their destructive pattern, you are removing the opportunity for them to create more negative karma. When you allow someone to verbally abuse you, to manipulate you, or to mistreat you, you are, in a sense, enabling their unskillful behavior. You are making it easy for them to continue sowing the seeds of their own future suffering. By setting a firm boundary and saying no, you are holding up a mirror to their actions. This may be painful for them. It may be the first arrow that they have been avoiding, but it may also be the very thing they need to finally see the consequences of their behavior and begin their own journey of change. A boundary is not a punishment. It is a loving refusal to cooperate with another person's self-destruction. This brings us to one of the most dangerous traps on the spiritual path, the misuse of the concept of karma as a justification for staying in an abusive situation. You may think, this terrible relationship must be my karma from a past life. I must stay and endure it to pay off my debt. This is a grave misunderstanding of how karma works. Yes, it may very well be your karma to have met this person and to find yourself in this challenging dynamic. That is the situation, the field of play. But your responsibility, your new karma that you are creating in every moment, is how you choose to respond to that situation. Do you choose to remain passive, to allow yourself to be harmed, and thus create the causes for more fear and suffering in your future? Or do you choose the path of courage, wisdom, and self-preservation, creating the causes for future strength, safety, and peace? Your karma is your choice. You are responsible for your actions, your healing, and your safety. You are never responsible for another person's abusive behavior. Their abuse is their karma. Your response is yours. The goal of the path is to free all beings from suffering, and that must include yourself. This often leads to the most painful decision of all, leaving a relationship. This is especially difficult when love and pain are deeply intertwined. But sometimes, leaving is the only sane and compassionate option. Imagine a woman who is married to a man she loves deeply, but who is also an alcoholic. For years, she has played the role of the rescuer. She has pleaded, threatened, and supported him through countless cycles of sobriety and relapse. She has loved him, and a part of her still loves the man he is when he is not drinking. But she finally arrives at a moment of profound, sorrowful clarity. She realizes, my staying here is not helping him. It is enabling him. It allows him to avoid the ultimate consequences of his addiction. And in the process, it is destroying my life, my spirit, and my own well-being. The most loving thing I can do for him is to show him the true cost of his actions. And the most loving thing I can do for myself is to get to safety. Her decision to leave is not born of hatred, but of a broken-hearted wisdom. She can pack her bags with a heart full of karuna, of compassion for the deep suffering that drives his addiction. As she closes the door for the last time, her final thought can be a prayer of metta. May you find the strength to heal. May you find your way out of this pain. I wish you well, but I cannot set myself on fire to keep you warm any longer. This is leaving with love. It is the practice of fierce grace. It is the ultimate boundary, enacted not to punish, but to preserve life and create the possibility of healing for everyone involved, even if it must happen from a distance. Setting boundaries, whether it is leaving a room during a tirade or leaving a marriage, is a skill. It requires clarity, simplicity, and resolve. A boundary should be stated clearly and calmly, without blame or excessive explanation. I will not be spoken to with disrespect. If it continues, I will end this conversation. It must be firm. A boundary without a consequence is just a suggestion. You must be prepared to follow through on what you have said, and you must be prepared for pushback. People who are accustomed to violating your personal space will almost certainly test your new resolve. They may react with anger, try to manipulate you with guilt, or accuse you of being cruel and selfish. This is a predictable part of the process. Your work is to stay grounded in your own body, connected to your own value, and to hold the linen knot for them, but for the sacredness of your own peace. Ultimately, healthy boundaries are the practical, real-world expression of a wise and compassionate heart. They are the recognition that authentic love cannot possibly flourish in an atmosphere of fear, control, or disrespect. A true spiritual path does not ask us to be doormats. It asks us to be wise. It asks us to be courageous. It asks us to be free. Understanding our karmic entanglements gives us the compassion to act without hatred, but the wisdom of the path must also give us the courage to protect ourselves. Sometimes, the most powerful, loving, and deeply spiritual word you can ever speak is a firm, clear, and unapologetic no. Leaving a relationship, or even just powerfully changing its dynamics by setting firm boundaries, can bring up immense fear. Fear of being alone, fear of an uncertain future, fear that we won't be okay on our own. How does Buddhist wisdom help us face this fundamental fear and find a source of security that no one can ever take away? This leads us to the practice of taking refuge in the island within. The decision to set a firm boundary, to say no to harm, to perhaps even walk away from a relationship, is a profound act of courage, but it is often followed by a wave of its equally powerful counterpart, fear. As we stand on the threshold of a new way of being, the fear of the unknown can be immense. Fear of being alone, fear of financial insecurity, fear of social judgment, fear that we have made a terrible mistake. This deep, primal fear is often the very reason we stay in harmful situations for far too long. We believe, on a subconscious level, that our safety and well-being are dependent on something external to use, a person, a job, or a particular life situation. The wisdom of the Buddha offers a direct and powerful antidote to this fundamental fear. It is found in his final words to his disciples, his last and most essential teaching. As he lay dying, he did not offer them a complex doctrine or a magical promise. He offered them a path to unshakable security. He said, "Therefore, Ananda, be an island unto yourself, a refuge unto yourself. Take refuge in nothing else." This is not a command to be lonely. It is a radical invitation to discover a source of peace and safety so profound that no one can ever give it to you and no one can ever take it away. We spend most of our lives seeking refuge in things that are, by their very nature, unreliable. We try to build our home on shifting sands. This is the truth of anicca, or impermanence. We seek ultimate refuge in a romantic partner, believing their love will be our permanent shelter. But people change, their feelings change, they may leave us or pass away. We seek refuge in our career, our wealth, or our social status, believing these things will make us secure. But economies collapse, companies downsize, and reputations can be destroyed in an instant. We seek refuge even in our own physical health and strength, but the body inevitably ages, gets sick, and weakens. When we make any of these external, impermanent things our ultimate source of safety, we are setting ourselves up for inevitable suffering. We live in constant, low-grade anxiety, terrified of losing the very thing we cling to for security. The relationship becomes poisoned by our fear of its ending. Our success is tainted by our fear of failure. This desperate search for a permanent refuge in an impermanent world is the very definition of a futile struggle. The Buddha offered a different way. He taught that true refuge cannot be found outside of ourselves. It can only be cultivated within. He tells a simple parable to illustrate this. A tortoise is walking near a lake when a hungry jackal sees him and begins to run towards him, intent on making him a meal. The tortoise sees the jackal coming. It does not panic. It does not try to outrun the jackal, for it is slow. It does not try to fight the jackal, for it has no weapons. It simply does what a tortoise does best. It withdraws its 5 limbs, its 4 legs, and its head safely into the hard, protective fortress of its own shell. The jackal arrives and is completely frustrated. It sniffs, bites, and claws at the shell, but it cannot harm the tortoise within. After a while, the exasperated jackal gives up and leaves. The Buddha explained that the jackal represents the dangers and temptations of the world, the painful sights, sounds, and experiences that attack us. The tortoise is the wise practitioner. The 5 limbs are our 5 senses, which we so often extend out into the world, getting us into trouble. The hard, protective shell is our own mindful awareness. When we are confronted by the jackals of life, criticism, temptation, fear, we do not have to fight them head-on. We can wisely withdraw our attention inward, taking refuge in the silent, spacious, and safe sanctuary of our own mindful presence. In that inner space, we are untouchable. This inner island, this refuge within, is not just a poetic idea. It is a real and tangible sanctuary that we build and furnish through our spiritual practice. The firm ground of the island is the stability of our mindfulness, the ability to stay present and centered no matter what weather is passing through. The lighthouse on the island, cutting through the fog of confusion, is our wisdom, our panyartha clear seeing of reality as it is, not as we fear it to be. It is the understanding of impermanence, of karma, of the nature of suffering and its end. The food, water, and warmth on this island are the sublime qualities of the heart we have been cultivating. It is the boundless love of metta and the active compassion of karuna. This ensures that our inner refuge is not a cold, lonely fortress of solitude, but a warm, vibrant, and nourishing home. This is our true home, a home we can never lose. It is completely portable. We can access it in the middle of a traffic jam, during a difficult meeting, or in the silent watches of a lonely night. It is the only refuge that will never fail us. Cultivating this inner refuge fundamentally heals the most painful illusion that drives us into codependency, the belief that we are incomplete. Popular culture feeds us the romantic myth of the other half, the idea that we are a broken piece of a puzzle, and we need to find that one special person to complete us and make us whole. This belief, while seemingly romantic, is a recipe for suffering. It sends us on a desperate search outside of ourselves for something we believe we lack. It turns our relationships into a transaction where we are trying to get our missing pieces from another person, who is in turn trying to get their missing pieces from us. The Buddhist path offers a revolutionary alternative. It teaches that you are not a half. You are already whole. Your true nature, your innermost consciousness, is already complete, perfect, and radiant. It is like the sun. The suffering you experience, your fear, your anger, your insecurity is like a passing covering of clouds. The clouds are not the sun. They can temporarily obscure the sun, but they can never damage or diminish it. The sun is always there, in its radiant perfection. Spiritual practice, therefore, is not a process of building a sun or of finding a piece of someone else's sun to complete our own. It is simply the patient, diligent work of clearing away the clouds of our own confusion and attachment, so that the sun of our own true nature, which has been there all along, can shine forth. When you realize this, when you experience even a glimpse of this innate wholeness, the desperate search for someone to complete you comes to an end. You are no longer a beggar looking for scraps of validation and security. You are a king or queen, resting in the wealth of your own inner kingdom. To be an island unto yourself is not a sentence of lonely isolation. It is the great declaration of your own spiritual sovereignty. It is the discovery of an inner richness that makes you truly free. And from this place of fullness and freedom, the nature of our relationships is utterly transformed. We no longer enter a relationship to get something, to get security, to get validation, to fill a void. Instead, we enter a relationship to give something, to share the joy, peace, and love that is already overflowing from our own full heart. As we begin to build this inner refuge, this island of peace within ourselves, the very nature of our relationships begins to transform. They are no longer desperate attempts to fill a void or to find safety from the storms of life. They become something else entirely, a joyful sharing between two whole individuals. What does a relationship look like when it is not based on need, but on a shared journey of awakening? This is the realm of the Kalyana Mittata, the spiritual friend. We have journeyed inward to the very center of our being and have discovered an unshakable refuge, an island of peace that is always available to us. We have learned that we are not a broken half searching for another, but a radiant whole, already complete. So what happens when two people, each standing securely on their own inner island, choose to build a bridge of connection? What does love look like when it is no longer driven by need, fear, or a sense of lack? It becomes something rare, precious, and profoundly transformative. The Buddhist tradition has a special name for this highest form of connection, Kalyana Mittata. It is often translated as spiritual friendship or noble friendship, and it represents the most beautiful potential of a human relationship, a sacred partnership dedicated to mutual awakening. The Buddha placed such immense value on this type of connection that it can be startling to our modern, individualistic ears. The story is told that one day, his loyal attendant, Ananda, came to him with a great insight. He said, "Venerable Sir, it seems to me that spiritual friendship is half of the holy life." The Buddha immediately corrected him. "Do not say so, Ananda, do not say so. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the holy life." Why would he make such an absolute statement? Because the path to wisdom and freedom is long and difficult. Our old habits of clinging, aversion, and ignorance are powerful. We cannot uproot them alone. We need mirrors. We need allies. A true spiritual friend is the clearest, kindest, and most trustworthy mirror we can ever find. A spiritual friend is far more than just a partner who shares our interests or makes us feel good. A Kalyanamitta is someone who sees our highest potential, our innate goodness, our Buddha nature, and holds that vision for us, especially when we have forgotten it ourselves. They are not afraid to gently and compassionately point out our blind spots. They see our ego trying to defend itself, and they don't play along with the story. They see us falling into old, unskillful habits, and they lovingly remind us of our own deeper intentions. They are not there to enable our weaknesses, but to celebrate and nurture our strengths. Their friendship is a constant, gentle call to our better selves. This transforms the entire dynamic of a relationship. Think of the different ways two people can relate. In a codependent relationship, the two people are clinging to each other, so enmeshed they can barely breathe. They are looking at each other, desperately trying to get their needs met. In a transactional relationship, they are sitting across a table from one another, endlessly negotiating a deal. But in a spiritual friendship, the two partners are standing shoulder to shoulder, perhaps holding hands, and they are looking out together in the same direction. The horizon they share is their mutual commitment to growth, to wisdom, to compassion, and to liberation. The central question of the relationship shifts from, "What can I get from you?" to "How can we support one another on this sacred path?" The relationship itself becomes the path. This support for each other's liberation is not an abstract idea. It is expressed in concrete, daily actions. It might look like a couple who agrees to meditate together each morning, even if they sit in silence. The shared energy of their discipline creates a powerful field of support that strengthens them both. Their conversations begin to change. They still talk about their day, but they also make space to talk about their practice. One might say, "I was listening to a Dharma talk about patience today, and I realized how reactive I was in that meeting at work. I can really see my impatience as a form of suffering." This transforms everyday chatter into a shared investigation of the truth. They become, for each other, a compassionate bell of mindfulness. When one partner is lost in a storm of anger or anxiety, the other, grounded in their own practice, does not get pulled into the storm with them. Instead, they can gently and lovingly say, "I see you are in a lot of pain right now. Let's just take 3 deep breaths together." This is not a condescending command, but a compassionate invitation back to the safety of the present moment. They hold each other accountable, but always with love. If one person speaks a harsh word, the other can later say, gently, "I know how much you are working on wise speech. It felt hurtful when you said that. Is there another way we could have talked about it?" This is not criticism. It is a loving reminder of a shared commitment, born from a deep belief in the other's capacity to grow. A relationship like this becomes a spiritual accelerator. It is a crucible in which both partners are purified and strengthened, growing more quickly together than they ever could have alone. In a spiritual friendship, the very nature of love begins to transform. It becomes a love that is gloriously free from the fear of loss. Because both partners have discovered their own inner refuge, they are not clinging to each other for their fundamental sense of security. They are together by choice, not by need. Their connection is a joyous celebration, not a fearful contract. It is a love that is free from the exhausting project of trying to change the other person. There is a radical acceptance of who their partner is right now, in all their beautiful imperfection, combined with an unwavering celebration of the magnificent being they are in the process of becoming. The deepest intimacy in such a relationship is found not only in moments of romance or passion, but in the shared silence of sitting together, in the profound vulnerability of admitting a spiritual struggle, and in the selfless joy of witnessing the light of wisdom dawn in their partner's eyes. To see the person you love become freer, wiser, and more compassionate is the greatest gift, and to know that you have supported that journey is the deepest fulfillment. Kalyana Mitata is the beautiful and logical culmination of all the practices we have explored. It is the natural flowering of a connection between two people who have learned to practice love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. It is the most profound answer to the question of love and karma, because it elevates a relationship beyond the realm of repaying old debts and into the sacred space of co-creating a liberated future. It is a partnership that doesn't just make you happy. It is a partnership that helps to make you free. This journey from the tangled knots of karmic debt to the open sky of spiritual friendship is profound. It changes not just our relationships, but how we see love itself. With this new understanding, let us now revisit the core question that began our journey, but from this higher ground. Do we truly owe each other something? We began this long and deep journey together with a single, heavy question. A question that echoes in the silent moments of so many of our relationships. Do we owe each other something? This question is born from the feeling of the karmic entanglement that can make love feel like a burden. It is the language of the transactional ledger, with its anxious accounting of debts and credits. It is the voice of codependency, which whispers that we owe another person our happiness and our very self. But now, having traveled through the landscapes of karma, compassion, and inner freedom, having discovered the unshakable island within and the boundless sky of spiritual friendship, we can return to this question, not from a place of fear and confusion, but from a high ground of wisdom, clarity, and peace. The answer we now find is that the very concept of debt, as we understood it, was an illusion. It was a product of a mind that felt itself to be lacking, a heart that believed it was empty and needed to be filled from the outside. The feeling of obligation, the sense that you have to do something for another person out of guilt or duty, is the feeling of a debtor reluctantly paying a creditor. It is a heavy, joyless energy. It is the feeling of paying a tax. But the journey we have undertaken is one that transforms our entire inner economy. Through the practices of mindfulness, forgiveness, and the cultivation of a boundless heart, we shift from a state of inner poverty to one of inexhaustible inner wealth. And from this place of fullness, the dynamic of giving is completely revolutionized. It is no longer an obligation. It becomes a spontaneous offering. It is no longer a reluctant payment, but a joyful gift. We no longer feel we have to give. We discover that we simply want to. Think of a great river, making its ceaseless journey to the sea. The river gives itself completely, pouring trillions of gallons of fresh water into the vast ocean. Does the river feel burdened by this act? Does it feel that it owes the ocean its water? The question itself is absurd. The river is not fulfilling a contractual obligation. It is fulfilling its own nature. The dharma of a river is to flow. Its joy, its purpose, its very essence is found in the act of moving, of giving, of releasing itself into something greater. It holds nothing back. The heart that has been cleared of the debris of attachment, resentment, and fear, the heart that is overflowing with the fresh waters of metta and karuna, becomes just like this river. Its nature is to love. Its nature is to give. It does not love in order to get something in return. It loves because that is its most authentic and joyful expression. The giving of love is no longer a debt to be paid, but a nature to be realized. In this state, the entire transactional model collapses, for its fuel source has been removed. The joy of giving becomes the act itself. When you listen with the deep, compassionate presence of karuna, and you see another person's suffering begin to lessen, the feeling of relief and connection you experience in that moment is the reward. When you practice mudita and you feel a genuine surge of happiness for a friend's success, that feeling of expansive joy is the reward. You have already received the profound prize of aligning your actions with your own awakened heart. You no longer need to look to the other person for a thank you, for recognition, or for a reciprocal act of kindness to feel that the exchange was worthwhile. You are freed from your dependence on their response. You can give freely, like the sun shines, without asking for anything back, because the very act of shining is its own fulfillment. This is the essence of unconditional love. It is a love that is finally, truly free. So if we are freed from the illusion of being indebted to others, does any sense of obligation remain? Yes, but it is of a completely different and more profound kind. The only true debt we carry is the debt we owe to ourselves. We owe it to ourselves to wake up. We owe it to ourselves to stop living a life driven by the ghosts of the past and the fears of the future. We owe it to ourselves to heal our wounds, to dissolve our attachments, and to take responsibility for our own happiness. We owe it to ourselves to undertake the journey of discovering the radiant, peaceful, and unbreakable nature that lies at the very core of our being. This is our one true and sacred obligation, the obligation to our own liberation. This is the most important work we can ever do, and it is a debt that only we can repay. We must be the one to practice mindfulness. We must be the one to cultivate a compassionate heart. We must be the one to choose forgiveness over resentment. No one can do this for us. But when we dedicate ourselves to paying this inner debt, when we commit to our own healing and awakening, a miraculous transformation occurs in all of our relationships. As we fill our own well, we discover that we have an infinite supply of water to offer others. As we learn to find refuge on our own inner island, we cease to need another person to be our savior or our shelter. Our love, then, is no longer a desperate strategy to get our own needs met. It is no longer a tool, a tactic, or a transaction. It becomes the simple, beautiful, and effortless overflow of our own inner peace. It is a gift we can finally give, with no strings attached, because we ourselves are no longer attached. By paying the debt we owe to ourselves, we are freed from the illusion of being indebted to anyone else. So let us ask our question one last time. Do we owe each other something? The answer is a beautiful paradox. No, we do not owe anyone our peace of mind. We are not bound to another by a karmic ledger of guilt and sacrifice. But yes, from a heart that has done its inner work, a heart that is full to bursting with love and understanding, we feel a new kind of debt. It is the debt the sun feels it owes the flower to shine upon it. It is the debt the rain cloud feels it owes the dry earth to release its rain. It is the debt the river feels it owes the ocean to flow. It is not a debt of burden. It is the joyful, unstoppable, and spontaneous impulse to give, to share, to love, and to serve, simply because that has become our nature. To arrive at this place, where love is a spontaneous offering rather than a heavy obligation, is the fruit of the entire journey. It is not a magical destination, but a way of living, day by day. So how do we walk this path? How do we integrate all that we have learned into a conscious way of life that truly embodies this selfless love? We have arrived at the understanding that true love is not a debt to be paid, but a spontaneous offering from a heart that is full. To reach this state of being is the beautiful fruit of the entire spiritual path. But it is crucial to remember that this is not a final destination where we arrive and then rest forever. It is, instead, a way of living. It is an unfolding path that we walk, day by day, breath by breath. The true practice is not found in a single, grand gesture of enlightenment, but in the thousand small, conscious choices we make in the midst of our ordinary lives. So how do we walk this path? How do we integrate all that we have learned, mindfulness, compassion, forgiveness, and wisdom into the very fabric of our being? The first and most important principle on this unfolding path is to trade the goal of perfection for the practice of patience. The spiritual life is not a linear ascent to a flawless state of being. It is a spiral dance. There will be moments of sublime clarity, grace, and connection. And there will be moments when we forget everything we have learned, when we fall back into the muddy ruts of our old, conditioned habits. We will speak a harsh word. We will get lost in a storm of anger. We will feel the sharp sting of jealousy. In those moments, the path is not to engage in self-criticism or despair. That is simply adding a second, and then a third, arrow to our own wound. The practice is to meet our own failure with a vast and tender compassion. It is to notice our mistake with a gentle, non-judgmental awareness and to think, there is the old habit. I see you. And then, with the kindness of a loving parent picking up a child who has fallen, we forgive ourselves instantly, and we gently, without fanfare, return to the path. The true measure of our progress is not how long we can go without stumbling, but how quickly and kindly we can get back up. With this compassionate attitude as our foundation, we begin to see that our entire life is the practice field. We no longer need to wait for the quiet of a meditation cushion or the special atmosphere of a retreat to do our inner work. Every moment becomes an opportunity. Being stuck in a traffic jam is no longer a source of rage. It is a formal invitation to practice patience and to notice the feeling of frustration in the body without being consumed by it. A difficult interaction with a coworker is not a personal attack. It is a chance to practice wise speech and deep listening. Seeing an advertisement featuring a seemingly perfect couple is not a trigger for comparison. It is an opportunity to practice mudita and wish for their happiness. When a loved one says something that hurts our feelings, it is a precious chance to feel the first arrow and to make the conscious choice not to fire the second arrow of retaliation. Even the most mundane moments become sacred. Waiting in line at the post office is a chance to practice mindfulness of breathing. Paying for our groceries is an opportunity to make genuine, kind eye contact with the cashier and silently offer them a wish of metta. When we adopt this view, life is no longer a series of distractions that pull us away from our practice. Life itself becomes the practice. When we commit to this way of living, we begin to realize that our inner state is not a private affair. It is a broadcast. The energy of our mind, be it agitated or calm, resentful or loving, radiates from us and has a palpable effect on the world around us. Think of your own heart and mind as a still pond. When you allow a stone of anger or anxiety to be thrown into it, the ripples of that disturbance spread out and affect everyone in your presence. But when you learn to cultivate inner stillness, when you tend to the quality of your own presence, your very being becomes a source of peace. Your calm can soothe another's anxiety. Your genuine listening can melt another's defensiveness. Your kindness can be the one drop of warmth that thaws a frozen heart. We often think that changing the world requires grand, heroic actions. But the most profound way to change the world is to change our own mind. By cultivating peace in our own heart, we become a peaceful presence for our family, our community, and the world. We are healing the world from the inside out. Imagine a day lived on this unfolding path. You might wake up and, instead of immediately reaching for the noise of your phone, you sit for just 5 minutes, cultivating a feeling of gratitude and offering metta for the day ahead. At the breakfast table, you put down your agenda and practice deep listening with your child for 3 uninterrupted minutes, making them feel truly seen. On your commute, You notice the tension in your shoulders, and you consciously release it with a few deep breaths. During a stressful meeting at work, you remember to feel your feet planted firmly on the floor, anchoring yourself in the present moment. In the evening, when your partner comes home, tired and irritable, you notice your own impulse to react to their mood, but you pause. You remember equanimity, and instead of meeting their stress with your own, you offer them a cup of tea and a moment of quiet, non-demanding presence. None of these are huge, dramatic acts. They are a series of small, conscious, and loving choices. They are almost invisible to the outside world. But these choices, compounded day after day, are what create a life of profound peace and meaning. This is how we integrate the path. Mindfulness is the awareness that allows us to see the choice point in each moment. The four immeasurables: love, compassion, joy, and equanimity are the qualities we choose to bring to that moment. Forgiveness and the four powers are what we use to heal when we fail. And wise speech, deep listening, and healthy boundaries are the skillful means we use to express our awakened heart in the world. They all work together, a beautiful and integrated system for living a conscious and loving life. This journey through karma and love, from the tangled knots of the past to the open sky of conscious relationship, brings us back, always, to the most fundamental truth. The source of our suffering and the source of our peace are both found within. As we prepare to conclude our time together, let us gather the threads of this entire journey and reflect on the beautiful tapestry they have woven. We began this journey together with a question heavy with the weight of obligation, a question that has echoed through the hearts of lovers, families, and friends for millennia. Do we owe each other something? We have traveled through the ancient landscapes of karma, exploring the invisible threads of duyen and ne that connect us. We have looked through the sharp, clear lens of modern psychology at the prisons of transactional love and codependency, seeing how we create ledgers of debt in our own minds. We discovered that the very chains we feel are often forged not by others, but by the fire of our own attachments, our own rigid views, and our own desperate clinging to how we think things should be. But we did not stop there. In the recognition of our own suffering, we also discovered the keys to unlock every one of those chains: the profound wisdom of letting go, the stabilizing power of mindfulness, the boundless warmth of an open and compassionate heart, and the unshakable peace of an equanimous mind. We learned to clean the wounds of the past with forgiveness, and to build a beautiful future with the skillful tools of conscious communication and spiritual friendship. And so we ask our question one final time, from this new and sacred ground: do we owe each other something? The answer we arrive at is a liberating paradox. No, not in the way a debtor owes a creditor. We are not bound by a cosmic balance sheet. We owe no one our peace of mind. We are not obligated to live in a prison of another's making, nor in a prison of our own guilt. The ultimate responsibility for our happiness and our freedom lies within our own hands. But the answer is also yes. When we have done the inner work, when we have healed our own heart and have discovered the inexhaustible well of peace within, a new kind of debt is born. It is the debt the sun feels to the earth, to offer its light. It is the debt a blossoming tree feels to the air, to offer its fragrance. It is not a burden to be paid, but a joyful, spontaneous, and overwhelming urge to give from a place of infinite abundance. The only true debt is love itself, and its only payment is to give it away, freely and without condition. The path to this freedom is not a distant, far-off destination. It is right here, in this breath, in this moment. You are not a victim of your karma. You are its creator. The peace you seek is not found in changing your partner, your family, or the world, but in the courageous and compassionate act of understanding yourself. You have within you, right now, everything you need to be free. May you remember that you are the vast, open sky, not the passing weather of your emotions. May you remember that you are the deep, calm ocean, not the turbulent waves on the surface. May you learn to be the open hand, not the grasping fist. May you walk your path with wisdom, love with freedom, and discover that the ultimate refuge, the truest love, and the most profound peace has been waiting patiently within you all along. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you be happy.